Chapter 1. The Call to the Peacock Ball. The late autumn sun lay low above the Surrey skyline as the carriage of Captain Arthur Hastings clattered up the winding drive to Ravenswood Manor. Hedgerows, trimmed to sculpted precision, framed the approach, while ancient oaks loomed overhead like silent sentinels. At the end of the drive, the great façade of Ravenswood Manor, a Tudor mansion of honeyed stone and mullioned windows, rose against the pale sky, its gables and chimneys softened by creeping ivy in hues of russet and gold. Within that venerable house, a singular event was to take place that very evening. The Peacock Ball, a masked fete celebrating Sir Rupert Ravenswood's coming of age. The invitations, delivered in cobalt-blue envelopes sealed with a fleur-de-lis of silver, had promised an evening of Venetian splendour, music and mystery beneath the mask. Among the honoured guests was none other than Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective, whose little grey cells had already solved more puzzles than most men could count. With him, of course, came his friend and chronicler, Captain Hastings. As Hastings alighted from the carriage, one of Ravenswood's footmen stepped forward to receive their cloaks. "Welcome to Ravenswood Manor, Captain Hastings. Sir Rupert awaits your arrival in the Grand Hall." He offered a stiff bow, his liveried coat catching the light. Hastings nodded, stepping onto the gravel and stretching after the journey. "Thank you, Jenkins," he replied, "and please send word to Monsieur Poirot that the festivities beckon." Jenkins gave another bow and disappeared inside the great front doors. Moments later, Hastings followed the echo of his own footsteps through a broad oak corridor to the Grand Hall, where tall stained-glass windows cast fragments of crimson and amber upon the polished marble floor. At the far end, beneath an elaborately carved hammer-beam roof, stood Sir Rupert Ravenswood, a handsome young man with chestnut hair and a jaunty smile, leaning easily against a marble column. In his hand was a slender peacock feather mask, its iridescent emerald and sapphire eyes glinting with promise. "Captain Hastings," Sir Rupert called in greeting, extending a gloved hand. "You and Monsieur Poirot honour us with your presence. May I present you both to Lady Ravenswood and the other guests?" He swept his arm toward a cluster of elegantly dressed figures, ladies in silken gowns and gentlemen in mourning coats, all holding masks of intricate lace or painted Venetian glass. Hastings glanced around, noting in particular two figures whose presence felt more than ornamental. Lady Eleanor Ravenswood, Sir Rupert's mother, clad in a gown of peacock blue satin, her dark hair gleaming with silver wire, and Lady Daphne Sinclair, the celebrated actress-turned-socialite, whose beauty was as famed as her legendary temper. "There you are, Hastings, and you too, Hercule," came a genial voice from behind. Hastings turned to see Poirot approaching, impeccably dressed in a dove-grey morning suit, his waxed moustaches and polished fawn shoes a testament to his meticulous standards. In his hand he carried a slender gold mask adorned with lapis lazuli and tiny seed pearls, its shape reminiscent of a butterfly's wings. "Ah, mon ami," Hastings said with a grin, extending his arm. "Delightful costume choice." Poirot inclined his head. "It is said that one's mask must reflect one's character, Hastings. Something light, symmetrical, and capable of flight." He allowed a small smile. "And yours is—" Hastings patted his black velvet half-mask, trimmed with peacock feathers. "My own design," he admitted, I trust it conceals mischief." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Indeed, mon ami. Now, let us join the others." The group drifted toward Lady Aochenthetchie, Ravenswood and Lady Sinclair, exchanging flourishes of greeting. An attendant offered them glasses of rose-petal champagne, its bubbles rising in fragrant clouds. Sir Rupert raised his glass. "To a night of wonders and no small measure of mystery." The guests echoed the toast, their laughter rich with anticipation. As the doors to the ballroom swung open, revealing an expanse of polished parquet lit by crystal chandeliers, a hush fell upon the assembly. The ballroom, decorated with swathes of emerald velvet and peacock feather garlands, had been transformed into a Venetian tableau. Gondola motifs adorned the walls, while a string quartet played soft strains of Vivaldi's Winter, modified with distant echoes of a muted timpani. Hastings let out a low whistle. "Extraordinary!" Poirot surveyed the scene with professional interest. "Mon Dieu, Hastings! Observe how the decor itself is a mask. Venetian fantasy disguising the English countryside." He paused. "But tonight, the true mask is the one each guest wears, to conceal identity, motive, and perhaps opportunity." No sooner had he spoken than a clear soprano voice rose above the music. Lady Daphne Sinclair, her auburn curls gleaming like copper under the chandelier lights, stood at the centre of the room, her mask removed to reveal luminous green eyes. She held aloft her peacock-feathered mask and spoke with theatrical flair. "Ladies and gentlemen, I beg your pardon for this interruption, but before the dancing begins, I wish to draw your attention to a certain objet d'art, Sir Rupert's ancestral cameo, now displayed upon the dais." A gasp rippled through the guests as all eyes turned to the dais, where a small satin cushion bore the exquisite cameo, a carved profile of an unknown beauty, set in a frame of tiny diamonds and enamel. Its provenance, legend had it, traced back to the original Ravenswood, a Venetian merchant whose daughter had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Lady Sinclair continued, "Tonight, I challenge the assembled company to a game most thrilling, to steal this cameo under cover of your mask, and return without detection before the stroke of midnight. The prize, a pair of tickets to Venice, where you may admire peacock feather masks in the very city that birthed them." A murmur of delight exploded into applause. Sir Rupert clapped his hands. "Well said, Daphne. A midnight heist, though purely for sport. I promise no scandal beyond the intrigue." He raised his glass again. "To the peacock feather mask challenge." Amid the convivial uproar, Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression thoughtful. "A game, yet perhaps also a test of cunning. We shall see which among these masked guests has the boldest heart and the steadiest nerve." Hastings grinned. "I look forward to chasing you through masked corridors, mon ami." Poirot tapped his cane. "Or perhaps it is I who shall ensnare you." As the revelry resumed, masks were adjusted, alliances formed with furtive glances, and the cocktail of champagne, music, and candlelight intoxicated every sense. No one noticed at first the slender figure slipping behind the velvet curtain that concealed the ballroom's grand organ, a figure whose mask was of pure white linen, without design or flourish, its emptiness more arresting than any painted motif. From that hidden vantage, the stranger observed each guest with shuttered intensity. A gloved hand closed upon a small object in his pocket, a delicate peacock feather, glistening with a drop of dew. As the clock in the tower struck 8:30, the stranger slipped from the curtain's fold and vanished into the labyrinth of side corridors, leaving only a whisper of feather and shadow behind. Back in the ballroom, Lady Sinclair proclaimed the first round of dancing, a minuet of masked pairs. Sir Rupert led in the figure, his white mask juxtaposed with Hastings's emerald-trimmed pair. Poirot watched them circle from the edge, his sharp eyes tracking every glance, every hesitation. He sensed the promise of secrets waiting to be unearthed, the challenge of the stolen cameo, the mystery of the plain white mask, and the deeper puzzle that lay beneath the surface of laughter and music. As the quartet began its next movement, an aria of strings and bass, the guests drifted into place, each mask a cipher to be broken. Somewhere in the hush between notes, Monsieur Poirot's mind whirred to life. The scent of rose-petal champagne still clinging to the air, the glint of feather in the stranger's hand, and the unspoken intrigue of midnight just beyond the next chime. Tonight, Hastings, he thought, will be an unforgettable night for more than just dancing. A hidden hand is already at work, seeking the ancestral cameo, seeking advantage, seeking a murder most rare. And only the little grey cells will pierce the mask to reveal the heart beneath. The Peacock Feather Mask Challenge had begun. Chapter 2. Whispers. Behind the mask, the grand clock in the east wing drew its first deliberate chime of the evening, echoing through Ravenswood Manor like a herald to hidden deeds. Within the cavernous vaulted corridors, masked figures drifted between doorways, their silken hems whispering upon marble floors. Tapered sconces cast trembling pools of golden light, illuminating the carved oak panels that bore centuries of Ravenswood lore. In such a labyrinth of galleries and anterooms, a single misplaced whisper could travel far, and portend worse than mere gossip. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings found themselves seated near one such quiet alcove, a niche framed by a pair of grotesque stone gargoyles. Between them, a small gilt-edged table held 2 flutes of elderflower champagne, still effervescent with frost-kissed bubbles. Hastings, mask off, nursed his glass with expectant fervour. Poirot, mask perched upon his suit's breast pocket, studied the crowd beyond with a keen, satin-slippered calm. "Ah, mon ami," Hastings murmured, voice low. "The music has begun in earnest, and yet the cameo remains untouched." He gestured toward the dais, where an ornate, velvet-cushioned pedestal bore the family heirloom, its diamond-studded frame reflecting the chandelier's flicker. The cameo's pale profile seemed both serene and seething with secrets. Poirot tapped the table lightly with his cane. "Patience, Hastings. The challenge is not to seize the cameo, but to do so without detection, and before the clock strikes midnight. That requires timing, subtlety, and above all, an intimate knowledge of this house's hidden veins." He inclined his head toward the far end of the hall, where Lady Daphne Sinclair had taken the floor with Sir Rupert. Their minuet drew admiring glances, but Hastings noted a flicker of steel beneath Lady Sinclair's emerald mask, a hardness at odds with her melodious laughter. "Daphne dances as though leading an army," Hastings observed. "She eyes that cameo with more zeal than mere sport." Poirot sipped his champagne. "She is a consummate actress, Hastings. If mischief brews tonight, her part is sure to be central. He glanced towards Sir Rupert, who bowed deeply to Lady Sinclair before stepping aside to make room for two other partners. But let us not focus only on the most flamboyant suspect. Ravenswood Manor, though splendid, is a spider's web, lovely but lethal to the unwary. They rose as Lady Ravenswood approached, her peacock blue satin shimmering like moonlight on water. Her mask, a filigree of mother-of-pearl in the shape of a plumed crest, hid all but the warmth of her eyes. She offered her gloved hand to each of the gentlemen in turn. "Hercule, Arthur," she greeted them, her voice hushed yet urgent. "Thank heavens you are here. Sir Rupert grows uneasy. He fears someone means more than a harmless theft." She glanced over Hastings's shoulder at a cluster of guests near the hearth. "Last I heard, Lady Sinclair whispered of forging alliances through unconventional means." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And I beg you to keep a vigilant eye. I fear our manor's legacy may be at stake." Then, before Poirot could reply, she melted back into the throng, her train of satin sweeping like a tide of blue. Hastings exhaled. "That sounds dreadfully serious. Do you think she suspects something murderous?" Poirot's expression was grave yet measured. "Only that there may be more than one kind of mask in this room, Hastings. The decorative kind, and the one forged by ambition. Now, let us look for opportunities. Windows ajar, secret panels, servants lingering too long in the wings. As if summoned by Poirot's words, distant notes of Sevillana rhythm swept through the hall. A circle of dancers formed around the cameo's pedestal, noblemen and debutantes alike. As the swirling pattern of lace and satin spun, two servants advanced with silvery platters of canapes, tiny tartlets of truffle mousse and smoked salmon rosettes, as though offering peace to every passer-by. Hastings sampled one, then noticed his companion pick up none. "Not hungry?" Hastings teased. Poirot shook his head. "I take sustenance from observation." He leaned closer, voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Notice how the butler, Mr. Flanders, hovers near the dais, yet his eyes flicker toward the tapestry of the west gallery. He is waiting for an unguarded moment." Hastings peered toward the butler, dignified in midnight blue livery. Flanders smiled tightly at a passing guest, then straightened, posture crisp as a spear. Beyond him, the west gallery's tapestries depicted hunts of stag and boar, their intricacies a perfect concealment for a furtive hand. Poirot raised a gloved finger. "Let us inspect the west gallery. There is where the walls hide their secrets." He led Hastings through the throng, skirting around Lady Sinclair and Sir Rupert, who were now exchanging low laughter, as they exited the ballroom's threshold into a narrower, dimly lit corridor. The music receded like a distant tide. Within the gallery, flickering wall sconces cast more shadows than light, and the carpet muffled their footsteps. Hastings noted a small brass plate set flush with the wainscoting, bearing an obscure cipher. "What might that be?" he asked. Poirot knelt to trace the glyphs with a fingertip. "A key to a secret door, Hastings. A cipher. Only those well-versed in Ravenswood history would recognize." He tapped the plate 3 times in a brisk pattern. Tap, tap, pause, tap, and the panels swung inward with a soft hiss, revealing a hidden stair descending into darkness. They paused at the mouth of the stair, its air fragrant with aged wood, and the faintest whisper of jasmine, echoing a distant promissory scent of something long hidden. Hastings swallowed. "Shall we?" Poirot's eyes shone with anticipation. "Indeed. The mask of normalcy holds only so long. Let us see what lies behind the facade." He lifted his cane and lit a slender lantern from a bracket on the wall, its glow revealing dust motes dancing like motes of gold. They descended in silence, each step a muted proclamation through centuries of secrecy. At the bottom of the steps, they found themselves in what appeared to be an abandoned minstrel's gallery. Broken lute shards lay strewn across the floor, and a single silk banner, once emblazoned with the Ravenswood coat of arms, hung in tatters from a crossbeam. Poirot studied the banner's fringe, noting a fine silken thread that glimmered like spun silver. He reached into his vest pocket and extracted the peacock feather Hastings had found slipping behind Lady Sinclair's mask the previous evening. A prize Hastings had pocketed in jest, only to produce now. The feather's quill retained a faint smear of violet dye. "Observe," Poirot said softly. "The fringe's silver thread bears a similar violet stain. Too fresh for mere age. Our thief carried dye here, perhaps to mark the flutter of their passing." He lifted a corner of the banner, revealing a rough-hewn door in the far wall, bound in iron. Behind that door, who knows what awaits? He placed the feather upon the lintel. A calling card, perhaps, to lead someone to this very place. Hastings pressed his ear to the door. Silence! Nothing! He frowned. "Shall we open it?" Poirot produced a slender skeleton key from his coat, a relic from previous investigations at Ravenswood. "We must, Hastings, but with caution. Tonight, every turn may conceal danger." He slid the key into the lock. With a single click, the door swung inward. A gust of stale air greeted them, carrying the smell of rotted vellum and old leather. A subterranean archive, perhaps, or the lair of a skulking saboteur. Beyond lay a narrow passage, lit by a single sputtering oil lamp set upon a sconce. Along the passage walls hung portraits of long-dead Ravenswoods, stern faces frozen in gilded frames, each with eyes that seemed to follow Poirot's lantern beam. They proceeded with measured steps, Poirot's cane tapping against stone every few paces, Hastings's lantern light dancing over damp patches in the cool air. At the passage's end they entered a small circular chamber, no larger than a drawing-room in miniature, where a solitary pedestal stood beneath a domed ceiling. Upon the pedestal lay a mask of pure ivory, its delicate features carved into a visage at once serene and inscrutable. Surrounding the mask, a great circle of pressed peacock feathers, emerald eyes sparkling with a strange luminescence, formed a wreath upon the stone floor. A single glass case at the room's centre held another cameo, identical to the one in the ballroom, but set in jet and onyx instead of diamond. Hastings's breath caught. A twin cameo, dark as morning. Poirot knelt beside the pedestal. Yes, a counterpart to Sir Rupert's ancestral cameo, this one bound in black, inlaid with coal, and the wreath of feathers, at once homage to the ball's theme and a warning. He touched the onyx cameo's frame. Whoever placed this here sought to offer a choice, the white cameo and its sparkle of diamond, or this dark sibling, promising secrets more, shadowed. Hastings circled the room, eyeing each feather. The emerald eyes, they matched the mask feathers our gentleman wore for the minuet. He pointed to a single green plume that lay askew. Its stem snapped. This feather bears the same break as mine did when I twirled clumsily last night. He smiled ruefully. Perhaps not so subtle a saboteur. Poirot stood and regarded Hastings with gentle amusement. We need not be suspects, mon ami. Yet your presence here means we share both discovery and danger. He turned to the glittering jet cameo. Let us secure both cameos, white and black, and return to the library. There we shall leave no feather unturned, no mask unlifted. He swept a gloved hand across the wreath. As he did, the oil lamp guttered and hissed, its flame threatening to extinguish. Hastings shot a worried glance upward. Shall we depart at once, monsieur? Poirot nodded gravely. Yes, before the mask falls away entirely. He lifted the mask of ivory and tucked it beneath his arm, then retrieved the black cameo from its glass case. With both treasures in hand, they retreated into the passage, closing the iron-bound door behind them. As they ascended the narrow stair back toward the ballroom, Hastings felt the weight of unseen eyes, those painted ancestors, and perhaps the lurking figure in white linen mask still at large. Yet, with Poirot's guiding light, they emerged into the grand hall once more, the strains of Sevillana greeting them like an unsteady heartbeat. Poirot replaced the white cameo on its correct cushion, the black on its matching velvet cloth, and set the peacock feather wreath aside. He turned to Hastings, voice low but resolute. We have found the twin symbols tonight, Hastings. The cameo of light, the cameo of shadow. Now, at first waltz of midnight, the true mask shall fall, and only then will the mystery of the peacock feather mask reveal its deepest. You. Hastings raised his glass in silent salute. To your little grey cells, Poirot. They guide me through every masquerade. Poirot allowed a singular, satisfied smile. And to the unmasking of truth. Now, let the final act begin. As the clock in the hall began its solemn toll for a new hour, the assembled guests turned expectantly toward the dais, and a fresh wave of masked intrigue washed over Ravenswood Manor, each peacock plume awaiting its moment of unmasking. Chapter 3. The Midnight Theft of the Diamond. Cameo. The grand clock in the ballroom tolled 11, each sonorous chime resonating through the vaulted ceiling and silencing the dancers mid-step. Poirot, standing near the dais where the two cameos rested on velvet cushions, the ancestral diamond cameo to the right, its jet-framed twin to the left, lifted a gloved finger in warning. Captain Hastings, poised beside him, felt the air tighten with anticipation as masked guests paused mid-waltz, eyes flicking toward the illuminated stage. Sir Rupert Ravenswood descended the dais steps, raising his jewelled mask to address the assembly. Friends, our peacock feather mask challenge now enters its final hour. When the clock strikes midnight, you may claim the diamond cameo if you have the nerve and cunning to steal it undetected. Until then, dance on, but beware the mask you wear and the heart you hide. A ripple of excited laughter and murmured wagers passed through the crowd as Sir Rupert replaced his mask and stepped back. As the violins resumed, Hastings observed discreetly how the guests rearranged themselves into couples. Lady Sinclair and Mr. Hadrell pairing off, Dr. Lawson with Lady Fairchild, James Fairchild with Celeste Montague. Each eye remained on the dais. Near the hearth, Mrs. Hudson exchanged quiet words with Flanders, the steward's face pale beneath his black velvet mask. Dupree, the gardener, hovered by the window, mask dangling at his side, studying the garden beyond. Even Lady Ravenswood watched with tense composure, her eyes never leaving the dais. Poirot caught Hastings's eye and inclined his chin toward a flurry of movement at the room's edge. Two masked figures in emerald and violet half-masks slipped away from the dancers and drifted toward a side corridor. "See, Hastings," Poirot whispered, voice low. "Those two search not for partners, but for opportunity." Hastings nodded, and they followed at a discreet distance, keeping the figures in view. The corridor light was dimmer here, sconces spaced with wider gaps, creating patches of shadow between doorways. Poirot and Hastings watched as the two glided past the panelled doors, one marked library, the other music gallery, and paused before the door next to the organ loft. The violet-masked figure, Lady Sinclair in lace, produced a slender key and slid it into the lock. The door gave way with a soft click. Poirot halted Hastings. "Lady Sinclair indeed holds the cabinet key, but whether by courtesy or collusion remains unseen." He motioned for silence, then pressed his back against the corridor wall, peering around the corner. Through the crack in the door, he saw Sinclair and her companion, Mr. Hadrell, step beyond the threshold into a low room lined with instrument cases and rolled rugs. They moved to a small side table where a silver tray of masked accessories lay abandoned. Sinclair removed her mask, revealing a flash of pale determination, and reached for a fiddle bow propped against the wall. Hadrell, mask off now as well, produced a slender steel blade from his jacket. Before Hastings could intervene, a sudden crash rang out. The ballroom's front doors burst open as two footmen scrambled in. "Monsieur Poirot! Captain Hastings! The cameo, Sir Rupert's diamond cameo, is missing!" Instantly the corridor erupted in alarm. Poirot signalled Hastings, and they darted back into the ballroom. At the dais stood Sir Rupert in stunned silence, his mask half removed. The right cushion lay empty. The diamond cameo was gone. Where the heirloom had sparkled, only the jet cameo remained, a dark sentinel on its velvet throne. Gasps, cries, and gentlemen's coats flared as guests surged forward. Poirot planted his cane firmly on the floor and raised a commanding voice. "Gentlemen, ladies, remain calm. No one may leave this room. The diamond cameo has been stolen, and the culprit is among us. I ask that all masks remain in place, all doors be watched, and that each guest return to the floor until further notice." Sir Rupert rallied the footman to lock the doors. Eyes wide, Lady Ravenswood stepped forward. "Hercule, Hastings, please uncover this theft before scandal devours us." Hastings murmured, "Mon Dieu," as the steward and housekeeper began posting guards. Poirot swept the ballroom with a steely gaze. "Let us begin with 3 vital points: where, when, and how." The cameo vanished from the dais between the 11th and 11th-and-a-half chime. Only one cushion moved, a sleight of hand by the lightest finger. He pointed to the dancers. "Observe these masks closely. Whose hand might be nimble enough for such a theft? His eyes flickered to Lady Sinclair, whose lace half-mask drooped at her chin, and to Hadril, whose palms glistened with the residue of steel. He tapped his cane. Now, to the scene of the crime. He led Hastings back through the throng, to the dais, careful to part the crowd like a prow through water. With a silver handkerchief, he wiped the velvet cushion's edge. Note here, no signs of struggle, only the imprint of a gloved hand. And see this small tuft of peacock blue silk caught in the velvet. Not the emerald green of Lady Sinclair, but the darker silk of Lady Ravenswood's gown. Hastings's breath caught. Your mother's? But she remained at the table. Poirot pocketed the silk. Even so, the snippet may have torn when the mask was removed, or when clandestine hands worked behind the curtain. He drew Hastings aside. We must inspect the secret passages once more. The cameo could have been spirited away through that concealed gallery door. While Hastings organized the house staff to guard the exits and keep the guests assembled, Poirot and the captain returned to the hidden stairway beneath the gargoyle alcove. As they descended, the music's distant notes slipped away, replaced by the hush of air through cobwebbed rafters. At the bottom, the circular chamber held only the wreath of peacock feathers and the black cameo, still exactly as they left it. Poirot knelt beside the wreath. Our thief did not take the dark cameo, Hastings. They aimed only for the diamond. He reached toward the black cameo's onyx frame and slipped it into his coat pocket. These two treasures, though kin, represent opposite ends of the same, desire light and dark, scandal and secrecy. He rose and led Hastings to the corridor. Let us check the lock on the organ loft door. Perhaps our suspect fled that way. At the organ loft door, they found deep scuff marks upon the sill and a single blue feather caught in the crevice. Poirot examined it with a lens. A peacock's eye, green and blue, but lighter than Lady Ravenswood's silk. More akin to your half-mask's trimming, Hastings. Hastings took the feather warily. Yes, my mask's border. He looked up. But why would I steal my friend's cameo? Poirot placed a hand upon his arm. No, mon ami, you are framed. He tapped the feather. Our true culprit used your mask's feathers as a false trail, and Lady Ravenswood's silk snippet to mislead further. The combination of clues points to someone intimately familiar with every corner of this house, someone who knew of the secret door, and someone who can exploit trust. They retraced their steps, lantern light bobbing, until they emerged into a smaller side room where a masked stranger stood waiting. A tall figure in black velvet, mask covering full face. The stranger's hand rested on the cameo's velvet cushion. Hastings drew his pistol, but Poirot raised a hand. Monsieur, the cameo is already recovered. He produced Sir Rupert's diamond heirloom from beneath his coat. The masked figure recoiled. Poirot gestured to Hastings. Lower your weapon. Hastings hesitated, then complied. The stranger dropped the cameo back onto its cushion and raised one gloved hand in surrender. In a measured tone he intoned, Well played, Poirot. It is time I unmasked myself. The figure removed the mask, revealing, but at that instant, the distant cry of midnight rang out from the grand hall. The 13th stroke loomed. The masked stranger froze, the cameo poised between Poirot and the door. Everything hung in perfect balance. The mask, the time, the fate of Ravenswood's legacy. As the final chime echoed through the corridors, Poirot's eyes glowed behind his pince-nez. "The hour has come, Hastings. Let us see whose face emerges from behind that mask, and what it will cost to lay the mystery of the Peacock feather mask to rest." Thus the curtain fell on the second act, and the heart of the heist beat loudest when time stood still. Chapter 4. The Phantom Cameo. The morning sun, pale and wintry, filtered through the lofty windows of the Ravenswood library, setting the polished oak to a gentle glow. Yet the warmth it promised did little to dispel the chill that ran through the assembled group of gentlemen and ladies now clustered around the dais. Sir Rupert Ravenswood stood at the centre, his mask removed, brows knitted, in consternation as he held the diamond cameo. Recovered, yes, but somehow different. Hercule Poirot, cane in hand, paced before the dais with the solemnity of a conductor leading a requiem. Beside him, Captain Hastings hovered, mask dangling, eyes wide. Lady Ravenswood and Lady Daphne Sinclair watched in anxious silence while Flanders and Mrs. Hudson exchanged worried glances. Even Sir Rupert's loyal gardener Dupré stood at the rear, arms folded, mask forgotten in his hand. Poirot lifted the cameo gingerly, turning it to catch the fragile glint of sunlight upon its facets. "Mes amis," he said in his smooth, deliberate tone, "we stand once more before the symbol of this house, a story told in diamond and enamel. Yet I must confess an unsettling truth. The cameo upon this dais is not the ancestral heirloom of the Ravenswoods." A gasp rose as Sir Rupert caught his breath. But I handed Monsieur Poirot the returned gem. Poirot inclined his head. "And so you did, my lord. Yet a jeweller of London's finest regard, who I dispatched at dawn, has confirmed what I suspected last night when I examined the setting. This cameo is a flawless copy, crafted in the image of the original, but lacking its hallmark that lies upon the reverse of the true heirloom." He paused, placing the cameo on its cushion with reverent care. "Our midnight thief did not steal this diamond. They stole a phantom." Captain Hastings exhaled in astonishment. "A phantom! So the real diamond cameo remains at large?" He turned to Sir Rupert. "Where was the heirloom kept before the ball?" Lord Ravenswood swallowed. "In my father's safety vault, here in the library's south wall. Only I and my steward, Mr. Flanders, hold the keys. Last evening, at 7, I'd asked him to retrieve it for the display. He folded his arms pale. Afterward, I never saw the real gem again." Poirot nodded. "Then our mystery deepens. The diamond upon the dais was already the copy when the ball began." He raised a gloved finger, meaning the theft occurred earlier, when the cameo left its vault, and the substitute was placed without Sir Rupert's knowledge. He swept his gaze across the company. "We must retrace that moment, between 6 and 7, when Flanders brought forth the gem for display, and when the guests took their places." Flanders stepped forward, hat in hand. I vouch for the cameo's authenticity, as I removed it from the vault. Yet I confess I did not examine its reverse. I was in haste to prepare the dais." He bowed. "If a substitute was placed, then my oversight lies at the heart of this disturbance." Lady Ravenswood's voice was soft but firm. "Roland, she said, addressing her son, "we must not assign blame lightly. The vault's mechanism is known to few, and its warded lock cannot be opened without its key." She turned to Poirot. "Pray, sir, where might the impostor have accessed that vault?" Poirot clasped his cane, eyes bright. "The vault is indeed secured by a warded lock with 12 tumblers, keyed only to 2 duplicates, one in Mr. Flanders's custody, the other held by myself for review of the memoirs. Yet there is a third access, the steward's hidden lever, concealed in the carved panelling, its location known to any honest steward, but also to one other confederate." He locked eyes with Captain Hastings. "Tell me, Hastings, which door did you pass on your route to inform me of the midnight theft?" Hastings blinked. "The door to the music gallery, then past Lady Sinclair's cloakroom, and along the corridor past the stone gargoyles." Poirot nodded. "And that cloakroom, Hastings, contains an identical key on a marked hook, for Lady Sinclair's convenience in changing masks. A convenient opportunity." Lady Sinclair's cheeks flushed. "You insinuate I took the vault key?" she demanded, voice trembling. "My dear detective, I attend only to my own masks, not to your mysteries." Poirot's expression bore no malice. "Madam, your cloakroom key is indeed of the correct warding, but it bears a telltale scratch upon its bow, one lightly filed to allow smoother turning under duress." He held up the key. "See here, a shallow crescent notch." He produced Mr. Flanders's key ring and pulled forth his vault key. In contrast, Mr. Flanders's key is pristine. Therefore, someone borrowed the cloakroom key, filed it partially, substituted it here, and used it to remove the heirloom. He paused. "Madam?" Lady Sinclair's breath came hard. I have given that key to no one. I only—" Her voice choked. "I store my masks there." She opened her fan to conceal her eyes. "You must be mistaken." Poirot moved to the dais and picked up the copy cameo once more. "Our second clue lies here. The copy is carved in a softer lapis paste composite. Its maker's mark, lightly incised upon its underframe, reads C.R. Churchill and Reading, London. He held it for all to see, a reputable jeweller, known for decorative reproductions. To commission such a copy requires considerable expense and secrecy." He set it down. "Who among us has both the resources and the motive to commission a facsimile before the ball?" Sir Rupert spoke, voice taut. "The only one with motive is—" He caught himself. "No, it cannot be." He glanced at Sir Rowland Hadrell, the publisher, who stood stiffly to one side. Hadrell's face paled, mask at his feet. Poirot turned to Hadrell. "You who publish sensational memoirs, did you not wish to orchestrate a scandal that would sell volumes?" He allowed the question to hover. Hadrell swallowed. "Monsieur Poirot, I admit I once considered publishing an exposé of the cameo's secrets, but by this morning I had chosen discretion. No need for theft." Poirot nodded. A close call, but not quite the truth. He addressed the company. "Let us examine the vault itself." He led them to the south wall, where Flanders pressed the secret panel. The carved oak swung open, revealing the round, iron-bound door. Hastings produced the key from Poirot's hand and inserted it, opening the vault with a solemn groan. Within lay heavy velvet crates and the family jewels. except for the diamond cameo. On a shelf nestling in satin lay the jet cameo's twin, perfectly intact. "Behold," Poirot said softly, "the twin portrait lost not to theft, but to oversight." He retrieved the jet cameo and held it beside the faux copy. The impostor left this behind, either by design or by hurry, taking the real diamond and leaving the black gem as a ghostly mirror. He glanced at Lady Ravenswood. "My lady, does this sight comfort or distress you?" She closed her eyes, voice measured. "It is a reminder that nothing is beyond deception, and that identity, like a gem, can be recut to appear new." She turned to Lady Sinclair. "Daphne, were you aware of the vault's hidden lever?" Lady Sinclair shook her head. "Never. She broke off. Her mask quivered in her hand. "I only knew of the cameo upon the pedestal." She gestured to where the copy lay. Poirot watched her keenly. "And yet you possessed the cloakroom key. Only 3 persons share that key. Myself, Mr. Flanders, and Lady Sinclair." He turned to Flanders, who paled. "Raise your hand, sir. Have you noticed your key missing, then returned?" Flanders lifted a trembling hand. "Yes, but I thought I misplaced it during the buffet service." His voice broke. I returned it wholeheartedly that night. I swear I did not enter the vault." Poirot's moustaches twitched. "Then it remains only that Lady Sinclair, quite inadvertently or under pressure, provided the means." Lady Sinclair's fan dropped to her skirts. Her green eyes glistened. I cannot deny I held that key." She swallowed. "But if I opened the vault, it was to inspect the jet cameo, to study the Gothic partner of the diamond in my capacity as art adviser." She faltered. "I intended to replace both on the dais, yet I panicked when I found the twin in place." Sir Rupert's voice broke the hush. "Daphne, why did you not speak at once?" She faced him, tears brimming. Because I feared you would banish me from this house forever, and because I believed I could return it without harm." She sank into a chair, mask clutched to her breast. "Forgive me." Hastings crossed to her side. "Dear friend, the house forgives, though the mystery deepens. For if Lady Sinclair replaced the jet cameo, then Bolton and Chapman's copy of the diamond must have been commissioned well in advance." Hastings gestured to the forged seal upon the fake cameo frame. "Churchill and Reading, tell me, Lady Sinclair, did you consult them last week?" She nodded. I visited their atelier to discuss costume jewellery for the ball." She paused. "But I never expected them to create a full-scale reproduction." Poirot tapped his cane. A final piece falls into place. The thief clandestinely acquired the cameo copy at the atelier, delivered it to this library, and conspired with Lady Sinclair, wittingly or unwittingly, to switch the heirloom. Then, at midnight, the diamond cameo was taken from the vault, and somewhere, hidden within this house or carried out, the real treasure awaits." He turned to the assembled guests. "Our task now is twofold: to recover the true diamond cameo, and to understand the motive behind its ransom." He paused, eyes alight. "We shall meet again at midnight this very night, back in the Grand Hall, where the mask of convention shall fall, and every secret shall be laid bare." As the guests absorbed this ambitious plan, the library's windows seemed to darken, with the promise of nocturnal revelations. The phantom cameo had been unmasked, Yet its true face remained elusive, waiting to emerge in the deep of night. And so, as the clock struck 10, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings departed to marshal the household, each heart tuned to the final act of a drama, written in shadow and light, feathers and glass, where only the little grey cells could illuminate the ultimate truth. Chapter 5. The Hunt Through Masked Corridors. The manor lay hushed in the hour before midnight, every corridor and chamber seeming to hold its breath. Heavy drapes across the grand hall windows stilled the moonlight, and candle labyrinths cast wavering shadows upon the ancient walls. All of Ravenswood had been alerted. No guest was to leave the ballroom, no servant to stray from their post. Yet within this cage of etiquette and gold, a more urgent hunt was underway. In the centre of the grand hall, Hercule Poirot drew himself erect beside the ivory and onyx dais. The black velvet cushion still cradled the jet cameo. The diamond, heirloom, remained, conspicuously absent from its rightful place. On the far side of the hall, Captain Hastings stood at the base of the grand staircase, overseeing the posts at each exit. "Monsieur Poirot," Hastings whispered, bowing low, "all the doors are watched. No carriage may depart. No footman may wander free. Yet our phantom thief still remains at large." Poirot tapped his cane. "Indeed, Hastings, which means the culprit must still be within these walls, blended among the masked, guests or hidden by the servants. We must scour every secret corridor, every concealed cabinet, until the diamond cameo is found." He raised a slender finger. "First, the music gallery, where Lady Sinclair and Mr. Hadrell were last seen slipping away. A narrow gallery ran alongside the ballroom, its floor inlaid with fleur-de-lis patterns, and its walls hung with portraiture of long-dead Ravenswoods. A single harp lay propped against a corner, strings silken in the still air. Poirot and Hastings passed through the side door, cloaked by the strains of the quartet. There they found Lady Sinclair's peacock feather half-mask on a marble ledge, its emerald eyes glistening. Hastings retrieved it with a puzzled frown. She left this behind, in her haste. Poirot examined the mask under his lantern's glow. "No, Hastings, that mask bears no blood nor tear, but its interior is faintly powdered with wax. Someone wiped the cameo here to test its fit, then dropped their mask in haste. He pocketed it. We follow the stain." Along the dado rail, the polished wood bore a fine smear of candle wax. Hastings inclined his lantern, revealing a hidden lever beneath the rail. "Poirot, this looks like the mechanism you spoke of." He pulled. The panel swung inward to reveal a narrow staircase winding upward. With measured steps, they ascended into the murk above the gallery. At the top, a trapdoor opened onto the ringing gauntlet of the organ loft, whose wooden pipes rose to the rafters. The air smelled of dust and dry leather. Hastings surveyed the floor. No sign of movement save our own tracks. Poirot crouched beside the organ bench. Yet see here, on the pedal-board, where one might stand to peer down, an imprint of a dainty shoe, its heel worn new. He traced the outline, not Lady Sinclair's robust tread, nor Hastings's boot, but the slipper of a female guest, possibly Lady Fairchild, or perhaps another. Hastings frowned. If our thief climbed here, they could watch the ballroom below, and descend to seize the cameo unseen. Poirot nodded. Let us leave the loft safeguarded, then proceed to the library vault. Back at the vault, the heavy oak door remained locked, the key held by Flanders. Poirot unlocked it, stepping inside with Hastings close behind. The vault's shelves were lined with treasures, silver reliquaries, jewelled goblets, and rows of leather folios. On the top shelf, the cotton pillow that once bore the diamond cameo lay undisturbed, its satin cover turned. Hastings retrieved the black cameo's velvet cushion. Still here, safe at least. Poirot swept the room with a practised eye. Note, Hastings, the iron-bound chest beneath the ledger desk. He tapped its lid. Locked. But look at these scratches, as though something was repeatedly pried beneath the metalwork. He drew a fine awl from his coat and inserted it into the seam, lifting the lock mechanism just enough to ease it open. Inside lay a small leather pouch, its drawstrings knotted. Hastings drew it forth and untied the cords, revealing a single peacock feather fan, its sticks made of silver filigree, inlaid with emeralds. Hastings held the fan up. My word, Lady Ravenswood's personal fan, but why hide it here? He opened the fan's leaf, only to find the ivory cameo resting within, taped to the mirror behind the leaf. The real cameo. Hastings's eyes widened. Monsieur, she hid it here, to keep it safe. Poirot inclined his head. Precisely. The lady feared the thief would target the gallery or the ballroom. She hid the diamond cameo in the chest, then replaced it with a substitute, yet failed to inform even her son. She panicked, unable to trust even Flanders. He turned to Hastings. Let us return the cameo at once. In the adjacent drawing-room, Lady Ravenswood sat by the fire, sipping thick hot chocolate. Hastings entered bowing. My lady, we recover your diamond cameo. He produced it, its facets sparkling like captured stars. She gasped and touched the glass case. Mercy, my own folly nearly cost it. Poirot followed, lifting a hand, toward Lady Sinclair, who perched nearby, mask in lap. Madam, I must ask, why did you not confess to moving the cameo? You alone knew of its hiding place. Lady Sinclair's lips quivered. I was bound by fear. My reputation, my career. I thought to inform you later, but events overtook me. And then the theft occurred. Lady Ravenswood reached across. Daphne, I wish you had trusted us, but now we know the truth. She turned to Poirot. Shall we proclaim the mystery solved? Poirot surveyed them. Hastings nodding, Lady Sinclair tearful, Lady Ravenswood gracious. He inhaled deeply. Almost, my lady. For while we have found the cameo, we have yet to unmask the phantom who commissioned the copy and placed it upon the dais before the ball. He tapped his cane against the rug. That phantom still wanders among us. Lady Ravenswood's brow furrowed. You mean someone else, unknown? Poirot's eyes glowed. Indeed, a master hand lurking behind every mask. And until we discover the source of that counterfeit and its motive, the mystery of the peacock feather mask remains only half unveiled. As the fire crackled, the guests gathered in the doorway, drawn by the promise of revelation. Outside, the clock began its slow toll toward midnight. In that moment, every breath taken beneath a peacock feather mask seemed laden with secrets, still to be told, and with a final unmasking yet to come. Chapter 6. The Shadow Behind the Jeweller's Counter. The morning after the Phantom cameo's discovery, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings found themselves aboard the 8:15 express to London, en route to the celebrated jeweller Churchill and Reading. The carriage rocked gently, the misted fields of Surrey slipping by as Hastings wrapped a woolen scarf about his neck. "Mon ami," Hastings murmured, peering through the carriage window, "I confess I slept poorly. The image of that duplicated cameo haunts me, identical in every detail, yet hollow of the family's soul." Poirot leaned back, pince-nez perched upon his nose. "Precisely, Hastings. The artistry required to produce such a flawless copy can only come from a master hand, one in possession of Sir Reginald's original design, or at least impeccable drawings." He tapped his cane on the seat. "Let us learn who commissioned this impostor and why." They alighted at the jeweller's discreet frontage on Regent Street, passing through a heavy glass door etched with a gilt monogram. Inside, the air shimmered, with lamplight upon jewelled cases, each displaying brooches, lockets, and cameos of every conceivable provenance. A discreet footman in liveried livery nodded as they crossed the oriental carpet. "At your service, gentlemen," said Mr. Williams, the shop manager, bowing with professional courtesy. "I understand you seek a particular commission. Our recent order for a carved jet and diamond cameo." His voice lowered. "It was entrusted to us in strictest confidence." Poirot smiled. "Thank you, monsieur. Might we inspect your commission? Book?" He produced a small leather notebook. Williams led them to a glass-topped ledger on a velvet-padded podium. Under a single reading lamp, the pages lay open, cursive entries in brown ink. Client: Lady Augusta Ravenswood. October 10th, 10 a.m. Description: duplicate of family cameo, diamond original, settings to match. Delivery: October 28th, 2 p.m. Fee: 350 guineas, paid in advance via bearer's draft. Hastings whistled softly. "Lady Augusta Ravenswood? I had no notion such a title existed." Poirot studied the entry, eyes narrowed. "Nor did I. Our Lady Ravenswood is Eleanor, Sir Rupert's mother. Lady Augusta must be another Ravenswood, perhaps a spinster aunt." He tapped the ledger. "And note, the order was placed by bearer, with no address. The jewel left on October 28th at 2 p.m., carried in a locked box to an unknown destination." Williams fetched the carved copy from behind the counter, a perfect facsimile of the jet-framed cameo from the vault. Hastings held it against the diamond heirloom's photo. "By Jove, they are identical." Poirot inclined his head gravely. "Yet the true cameo is diamond. This is a seamless cast of black onyx." The resemblance deceived even the most discerning guest. Williams added quietly, "The craftsman, Monsieur Leclerc, retired after this job. He refused further commissions." Poirot pressed a fingertip against his moustache. "Then the secret dies with him, unless we find his notes, or the lady who collected the work." He turned to Hastings. "Shall we learn where the piece was carried after delivery?" The manager produced a dispatch book. It noted that the parcel left the atelier bound for Ravenswood Manor by special messenger. No courier's name appeared. Hastings frowned. A private messenger, perhaps the bearer who paid the fee. Poirot closed the ledger. "Our next step," Ascertain who is Lady Augusta Ravenswood. I suspect she resides at Ravenswood, in the cottage by the rose garden known as the Lodge." He tucked the notebook into his pocket. "Let us return at once." Back at Ravenswood Manor, the mist had lifted, but the air remained chill as Hastings and Poirot crossed the dew-slick lawn toward the lodge. A climbing rose, pruned to a graceful arch, framed the cottage's half-glazed door. Within, morning light danced upon embroidered curtains. Poirot knocked in his precise manner. The door creaked open to reveal a spare room lined with linen cupboards. A solitary figure, an elderly woman with silver-white hair, stood before a dresser mirror, peering at her reflection through narrow spectacles. She wore a high-necked gown of sombre grey, and her half-mask lay upon the dresser. "Madame," Poirot greeted softly, "I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings. We seek Lady Augusta Ravenswood." The woman set down a small brush. "I am she," she said, voice brittle yet dignified. "Enter, if you must." They stepped into the parlour, its shelves bare save for a single china rose. Hastings cleared his throat. "Lady Augusta, may we inquire about your visit to Churchill and Reading on October 10th? Lady Augusta's shoulders stiffened. "I requested a copy of our family's cameo. I hold no secret malice, but I feared the original might pass beyond our lineage." She gestured to a low table. "I paid with this draft." She produced a bearer's draft matching the jeweller's ledger. Hastings studied it. 350 guineas, a considerable sum. Lady Augusta nodded. "Believe our family's heritage must be preserved. I had no part in the theft, only in the substitution. I returned to collect the cameo on October 28th, but by then I learned of the midnight challenge. Too late." Her voice trembled. "I set the copy aside here, intending to retrieve it after the ball, but never did." Poirot folded his hands. "Madame, you replaced the original with this perfect copy." He held up a small velvet-lined box, a second copy of the jet cameo. Hastings blinked. "Another copy?" Lady Augusta swallowed. "Yes, when the original came from the vault, I dared not leave it upon display. I slipped it into a locked chest in the library, then placed this copy in its stead." She drew a breath. "I meant to preserve the diamond until I could speak with Sir Rupert, but the events of the ball overtook me." Poirot tapped his cane lightly. "Then you are not our phantom thief, but one driven by fear for your family's legacy." He turned to Hastings. "Yet another copy, another layer of deception. This drama deepens." Lady Augusta's gaze softened. "I had no clue about Lady Sinclair's or anyone else's part. I acted alone, in secrecy." She paused. "And now, I am sorry." Hastings placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Your confession helps clear much confusion, but we still lack the identity of the person who stole the diamond from the chest before your copy was placed." Lady Augusta nodded. "Yes, I returned to the library on the eve of the ball, key in hand, and found the chest unlocked, the cameo gone." She pressed her lips together. "I assumed theft. It never occurred to me that anyone else knew of that chest, save Flanders and one more." She hesitated, voice quavering. "Someone else held the key." Poirot inclined his head. "Precisely. There is a third key, held by one other, Sir Rupert himself, or those his confidence includes. But to close this circle, we must examine who had access. That afternoon, Poirot summoned the household to the library once more. The tall windows were thrown open to admit a pale breeze. Each attendant, from Lady Ravenswood to Dupre, stood by the shelves, masks in hand. "Mes amis," Poirot began, "we have learned much. Lady Augusta commissioned not one, but 2 copies of the jet cameo, intending to shield the diamond. Lady Sinclair brought 1 copy to the vault. Lady Augusta placed another. Now, who stole the diamond from the chest itself before any copy took its place?" He walked slowly to the ledger desk, then to Flanders, who held the original vault key. "Monsieur Flanders, did you lend your key to any other?" The steward bowed his head. "I allowed Lady Augusta to hold it briefly, but on the night of October 27th, I misplaced it, only to recover it in my pocket." His voice wavered. "I did not think to lock the chest." Poirot's gaze swept the company. So the chest lay unlocked for a time. "Who among you visited the library that night?" He glided toward Dr. Lawson. "Doctor?" Dr. Lawson stepped forward. "I came to fetch medical volumes on poisons, my own research." Poirot noted his calm. "Alone or in company?" The doctor cleared his throat. "Alone, but I heard footsteps in the corridor, distinctly feminine." "A tantalizing clue," Poirot murmured. He turned to Lady Fairchild. "Madam, you arrived late that night to fetch an evening dram." Lady Fairchild's cheeks coloured. Yes, I came to soothe my nerves with a glass of sherry. It was unlocked. I thought Flanders left it for me." She lifted her dark mask. "I held the key for a moment, but I did not enter the chest." Poirot raised a finger. "Yet you went into the library alone, and your footsteps first disturbed the chamber. Then, before Lady Augusta's 2nd copy arrived, the chest was opened." He looked to Celeste Montague, who had not yet spoken. "Mademoiselle?" Celeste, mask in hand, stepped forward. "Monsieur Poirot, last night I too entered the library, seeking Sir Rupert's botanical sketches. I thought the chest was a safe place to store my portfolio." She offered a trembling bow. I did not see the cameo then." Poirot's eyes gleamed. 3 persons used the chest that night. Flanders, Lady Fairchild, and Mademoiselle. Montague, one of you took the cameo. Tell me, who last touched the key?" He walked to Lady Ravenswood. "My lady, did you not double-check the chest before retiring?" Lady Ravenswood's lips pressed thin. "Yes, I saw it full, but I left immediately, called away by a servant's report." Poirot surveyed the mosaic of statements, then held up a single white peacock feather. "This feather was discovered yesterday behind the chest, caught in the latch. It is trilobed, of the variety used in antique fans." He turned to Lady Augusta. "Yours was silver filigreed. To Hastings' mask, the feathers were shorter and bristled. But to Lady Fairchild's personal fan, trilobed of the same size." He faced Lady Fairchild. "Madam, on the night of the 27th, you fell into the chest's latch, tearing this feather. Yet you did not mention this until now." Lady Fairchild's eyes widened. She extended her gloved hand to reveal the identical feather pinned to her gown. "Mon Dieu, I forgot. I slipped as I fumbled the key and fell against the latch. It tore off, and I tucked it into my sash." Her voice trembled. I did not know anything of the cameo then. Poirot inclined his head gravely. Thus, you alone bore evidence of the chest's secret. You entered Slip the Feather, and finding no cameo, left before Lady Augusta arrived. The true thief, however, must have come after you. He turned to James Fairchild. Monsieur, you work late in the chemical labs adjacent to the library. James nodded, face pale. Yes, I often test compounds there until after 10. Poirot continued. The chest's latch, having been tripped, jammed, and I found subtle powder, residue there this morning. A fine dust of powdered hematite used in chemical polishing. He fished a small vial from his pocket. This identical powder was found upon your gloves. James's cheeks flamed. I use it for my morphological studies, but I did not see the cameo. Poirot stepped back, surveying the room. Then our phantom thief must be someone else, skilled in mimicry. An outsider, perhaps a guest with knowledge of jewels, who commissioned the copy and timed the coercion. He tapped his cane. I suspect Mr. Hadrell, Sir Rupert's publisher, who understood the market value of scandal, and possessed the means to pay Churchill and Reading in advance. All eyes turned to Hadrell, who bowed his head. He removed his mask. Yes, Hercule, I confess I had the copy made. I wished to secure the diamond cameo before the edition sold, an exclusive for the press. He raised a hand. But I did not steal the real gem. I intended only to test the waters, not remove the treasure itself. Sir Rupert's voice rang out. You nearly destroyed my family's honour. He advanced on Hadrell, but Poirot raised his cane. Enough, my lord. Hadrell's intent was greed, but we must still find the culprit who actually took the diamond. Poirot paced to the window-sill. The phantom remains at large. He held out his arm. Come, Hastings, we shall trap this ghost tonight by laying the final snare. Captain Hastings lifted his mask. Lead on, Poirot. My pulse has quickened with the thrill of the chase. With that, the detective and his friend departed the library, leaving behind a chamber of masked guilt and mounting dread. The search for the phantom cameo's true captor would soon reach its culmination, beneath the final peal of midnight, where every feathered mask would at last fall. Chapter 7. The Secret Service. Tunnel a brittle frost coated the rose hedges and gravel paths of Ravenswood Manor as dawn's pale light crept across the lawns. In the library's high windows, shards of winter sun glimmered upon icicles. Yet within that chamber, a chill of intrigue lingered stronger than any morning wind. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings assembled the household staff before the étuve Cheng dais, where the diamond cameo now rested once more. All eyes, masked or unmasked, watched the little detective intently. Mes amis, Poirot began, voice as smooth and deliberate as a metronome. Last night's discussions have yielded many revelations, yet our diamond heirloom remains at risk. I propose this morning's work focus on its recovery, if indeed it has been moved since replacement, by following the trail of footprints I observed at the library window. He pointed to a narrow pane beside the vault, cracked slightly, where a masked hand must have jimmied it. There, we discovered a slender impression in the frost, velvet slipper tread, followed by a heavier riding boot. Whoever moved the cameo last night fled by that window. Let us follow them. Wrapping their cloaks about them, Poirot and Hastings, accompanied by Flanders and Dupré the gardener, stepped quietly through the French doors onto the terrace. Hastings knelt to inspect the frozen pebbles. "Here," he said, tracing a delicate line of velvet tread leading towards the wrought-iron gates, and a second, deeper tract of hobnailed boot leading in the same direction. Poirot nodded. The slippers provided silence. The boots, speed. Let us pursue both. They followed the tracks across the lawn, the frost crisp beneath their feet, until they reached the stable yard, a warren of stalls and coach-houses that all but hummed with hibernal quiet. Dupré paused at the entrance, lantern in hand. "Sir, I care for these horses each day. I would have noticed if someone carried the cameo through here." Yet the gardener's own riding boots bore no cameo residue. "There is another way in," Poirot observed, turning to Hastings. "Observe the half-glazed door to the coach-house, ajar by a crack." He tugged it open, revealing a cool gloom. Inside, coaches stood like slumbering beasts, their shafts shrouded in cobwebs. A single trough of straw lay in a corner, beside which 2 heavy riding boots rested, identical to the prints outside. Hastings's face turned thoughtful. Someone changed from slippers into these here, under cover of darkness, and concealed the velvet masks with the straw. He lifted one boot and examined the sole. "Look at these mud smears, identical to the stable yard." Poirot set his lantern upon a shaft and swept its beam across the floor. "Yes, this is where our phantom thief shed the velvet slippers and took the heavier boots for flight." Poirot pressed a gloved knuckle against the coach-house's far wall, listening. "Hear the echo?" he whispered. Hastings cocked his head. A hollow sound beyond the wall. Poirot's smile was faint. A service tunnel, once used centuries ago to shuttle supplies from the underground kitchens to the stables. The entrance concealed behind this panel. He tapped twice, then slid the panel aside to reveal a narrow stone stair leading downward, damp with dew. He lit a lantern and descended, Hastings following. Flanders and Dupré hesitated, but Poirot beckoned. "Fear not, gentlemen. No horse will bite." Reluctantly they joined, squeezing past the first curve into a low tunnel lined with brick. A faint smell of earth and old straw hung in the air. Above them they heard the distant echo of the manor's morning bell. At the tunnel's end, a slit of moonlight glimmered through a grilled aperture. Drainage for the stable yard. Hastings peered through and saw the coach-house floor above, the boots left behind. "Excellent," Poirot said. "Our thief fled this way, into the underground kitchen beneath the west wing. From there, he could re-enter the manor behind the scenes." He turned to Flanders. "Have the kitchen entrance secured. No one may leave without our knowledge." They emerged into the subterranean kitchen, a sprawling room of copper pots and stone troughs, now silent and chill. Blackened hearths stood cold, and iron hooks swayed above empty tables. Flanders locked the service door behind them. Poirot tapped a rusted pan with his cane. "Observe the underside, fresh flour smears, but also, see here, a glint of polished glass." Hastings plucked a small shard from the floor. A fragment of cameo casing, perhaps. Poirot examined it with his lens. Indeed, an edge of jet setting. Our phantom carried the cameo through here, inadvertently scratching it against this pan. He beckoned to Dupré. "Monsieur Dupré, where does this passage lead?" The gardener crossed to a corner where a large barrel acted as a smokehouse. Poirot removed the barrel's lid to reveal a second hidden door behind it. Dupree sighed. "I found this many years ago while renovating. Never used, it leads back under the pantry and into Lady Ravenswood's flower garden." Poirot nodded. A secret route from the library to the garden, used by servants or by one in disguise. He turned to Hastings. "We now searched the garden's secret entrance." They clambered beneath the barrel's arch into a narrow, root-lined tunnel that sloped upward, each step loosening pebbles until they emerged behind a clipped yew hedge near the rose garden. Under the winter roses, pruned now to naked canes, they found a recessed stone niche, camouflaged by climbing ivy. Within lay the diamond cameo, wrapped carefully in crimson velvet. Hastings drew it forth, cradling it as though it might shatter upon his palm. At last! Poirot examined the cameo's reverse under his lantern. Yes, the hallmark of the true heirloom, the tiny fleur-de-lis stamp used only on the original. He traced a faint inscription, R.R. 1624. Breaking the ivy's seal, he replaced the cameo in its original case. Our phantom placed the gem here, either to collect at leisure or to lure us into this trap. Hastings peered into the hidden niche. Why not make off with it entirely? Poirot's answer was spare. A dare, Hastings, a challenge to our ingenuity. The thief wants to thrill, not necessarily to profit. As they re-emerged from the tunnel, lantern light illuminating the frosted canes, they nearly collided with Lady Ravenswood and Lady Augusta, who had come to inspect the blooms. Each clutched a shawl about her shoulders. "My ladies," Poirot said, voice firm but gentle, "you were wise to seek the garden's recess. Here lies the diamond cameo, recovered from concealment. Yet this recovery raises new questions. Who placed it here, and why?" Lady Augusta gasped. "Monsieur Poirot, you have found it?" She drew closer. "But why not return it directly to the library?" Poirot's eyes glimmered. "Because the phantom master of ceremonies still plays his game. He has shown us the cameo's hiding places, but not his own face." He turned to Lady Ravenswood. "My lady, the garden paths may hold further clues. Perhaps footprints revealing whether the thief arrived or departed by carriage." They scoured the rose garden under the moonlight's glimmer. Hastings crouched beside the cameo's niche. There, tracks leading toward the potting shed. He pointed to a single set of footprints, this time of a man's dress shoe. Dupree followed the track. It led to the greenhouse door, where the glass was wet with condensation. Inside the greenhouse, vines climbed trellised walls, their leaves dusted with frost. In the centre, a lone figure stooped by the aqueduct. Lamplight shone upon a familiar blue gown, and the rasp of silk reached Poirot's ears. "Lady Sinclair!" Poirot exclaimed, advancing with measured pace. Hastings followed, weaponless but resolute. Lady Daphne Sinclair turned, her emerald mask in hand, breath ragged. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain!" she said, voice trembling. Just now. I found the cameo in the garden and brought it here to admire it in peace." She held up the diamond heirloom. Poirot's eyes narrowed behind his pince-nez. Yet why this hidden route through tunnels, this cipher of slippers and boots, these secret hiding places? You walked through tunnels into the rose garden and then into this greenhouse. Alone and unobserved, he gestured to the icy tracks on the greenhouse floor, velvet slipper prints and boot scuffs leading past the benches. You played your part in the dance, Lady Sinclair, but I believe the cameo's moving was your own doing. Lady Sinclair's hands quavered. I only wished to keep it safe from those who would exploit it. She drew in a ragged breath. I realized the phantom knew of the vault's secret lever. I feared for Sir Rupert's family legacy, so I moved the cameo night after night, hiding it here until I might find a more secure place. But each time I felt compelled to let the challenge continue, to test our heritage and to test you, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot inclining his head. A test indeed, and a perilous one. Yet your motive, though misguided, sprang from devotion, not malice. He signed to Hastings. Return the cameo to the dais, Hastings, and let us seal these tunnels once more. Hastings slipped the heirloom into its case and hurried away. In the library, Poirot oversaw the replacement of the cameo and the fastening of vault door and secret panels. Flanders secured the lever, and Dupree replanted the rose garden's ivy to mask the niche. In the coach-house, the boots were collected. In the kitchen, the tunnel entrance was bricked over. At each point, the phantom's trail was effaced, yet the impression of ingenuity remained. Standing once more before the dais, Poirot addressed the assembled household. Ladies and gentlemen, we have traced the diamond cameo's wanderings, from vault to dais to garden to greenhouse and back again. The phantom's identity was revealed as Lady Sinclair, whose devotion to Ravenswood's legacy led her astray. Yet now that the game is at its end, I ask you all, let the masks be lifted, and let truth stand unmarred. As the first chime of midnight approached, the rose-petal chandeliers dimmed, and the masked guests removed their disguises, faces both proud and contrite stepping into the lamplight. Lady Sinclair, mask in hand, bowed deeply. Sir Rupert stepped forward, taking her hand. "Thank you, Daphne," he said simply, "for your love of Ravenswood." Poirot tapped his cane, moustaches quivering with satisfaction. Thus, the mystery of the Peacock feather mask enters its final movements, where loyalty blossoms above subterfuge, and the little grey cells have once again illumined every hidden passage. And with that, the diamond cameo shone atop its dais once more, its journey through shadow and silence complete, its sparkle a testament to courage, cunning, and the indomitable triumph of truth over every mask. Chapter 8. The Mastermind Revealed. The Grand Hall had scarcely recovered from last night's tumult when Hercule Poirot summoned the inhabitants of Ravenswood Manor for one final gathering. The air was heavy with the scent of rose petals crushed under boots, and every tapestry seemed to whisper of secrets half-spoken and masks half-lifted. Through the tall windows, dawn's grey light pressed upon the floorboards, lending the room an austere hush. In the centre, upon the dais, lay the twin cameos, the diamond heirloom gleaming coldly upon its cushion, the black onyx marvel beside it. Around them stood Sir Rupert, Lady Ravenswood, Lady Daphne Sinclair, Lady Augusta, Captain Hastings, Flanders Dupree, Mrs. Hudson, Dr. Lawson, James Fairchild, Mr. Hadrell, and a scattering of servants. All had roles in the dramas of the past nights. and all now awaited the moment that would strip away every illusion. Poirot stepped forward, his cane tapping softly. He wore no mask. His face was grave, his waxed moustaches immobile as marble. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we come now to the final revelation in the mystery of the Peacock feather mask. We have retraced each step by velvet slipper and hobnailed boot. We have charted every hidden passage and secret niche. We have named those whose loyalty clouded their judgment and those whose devotion led them astray. Yet one player remains unseen, the patron of every switch and theft, the consummate architect of our masquerade." He paused, eyes flicking from face to face, lingering upon their tense silence. "That player is none other than Roland Hadrill." A murmur rippled through the audience. Sir Rupert's eyes widened. Lady Sinclair drew a sharp breath. Hastings stepped forward, mask forgotten in his hand. Even Flanders froze, as though the very walls had spoken. Poirot allowed the hush to deepen before he continued. "Mr. Hadrill, publisher of scandalous memoirs, connoisseur of sensational headlines, you commissioned the original copy from Churchill and Reading. You arranged for the diamond cameo to vanish from sight, only to resurface in the rose garden and the greenhouse, to inflame curiosity and drive the sale of your edition. You exploited Lady Sinclair and Lady Augusta's fears to seed further confusion, and you bribed the jeweller's apprentice to destroy any trace of your order. All for what end? Profit and notoriety." Mr. Hadrill's shoulders slumped. He stepped forward, removing his mask. "Yes, Hercule, I confess. My ambition outstripped my scruples. I believed that by choreographing scandal, I could ensure my book's triumph." His voice was low, eyes cast to the floor. "I did not imagine I would wound the Ravenswood name so deeply." Sir Rupert recovered from his shock and strode forward, dignity radiating from his tall frame. "You nearly shattered my family's trust, Roland. I welcomed you as a friend, and you repaid me by orchestrating thefts beneath my own roof." His voice cracked with passion. "Yet your confession is made openly, and for that you may stand in judgment not of law alone, but of our forgiveness." Lady Ravenswood's blue satin gown gleamed in the newborn light as she clasped her son's arm. "My friend," she said to Hadrill, "love of legacy can become a dangerous mask, yet the heart that reveals its misdeeds may still be worthy of mercy. Let this be the end of our masquerade." She turned to Poirot. "What do you advise?" Poirot inclined his head, folding his cane. "My lady, justice demands that Mr. Hadrill relinquish all rights to the memoirs, refund the fees paid to Churchill and Reading, and withdraw his edition from publication. He should also contribute to the restoration of Ravenswood's archives, ensuring that future generations know the truth rather than myth and scandal." He faced Hadrill. "Will you accept these terms?" Hadrill's voice was firm, despite the tears glistening at his lashes. "I accept, Hercule. It is a fair atonement." He turned to Sir Rupert. "I beg your pardon and your friendship once more." Sir Rupert nodded. "Let us seal this in a brotherly handshake rather than blood." The two men clasped hands, and a tremor of relief swept through the chamber as if dawn's light had banished every shadow. Poirot raised his cane. "Let us now return the cameos to their rightful places." he guided Flanders to unlock the iron door of the vault, where the twin masterpieces were placed back upon their cushions. May they rest in safety, unmolested by false ambition. He locked and bolted the vault. As the final bolts clicked into place, Lady Sinclair stepped forward, mask in hand. "Hercule, your little grey cells have once more illuminated the darkest of hearts. We owe you our deepest gratitude." She offered him a curtsy. Poirot inclined his head with a rare slight smile. "It is the triumph of truth that brings the greatest joy. The most elaborate mask is powerless in the face of sincerity." Outside the library windows, sunlight truly broke through the clouds, casting the manor's gables in radiant warmth. Captain Hastings clapped Poirot on the shoulder. "Bravo, mon ami! Once more we unmask the guilty." Poirot lowered his hand to his heart. Let tonight's lesson endure, that the greatest mysteries arise not from hidden corridors, but from the hidden motives within us all. He tapped his cane. "And now let us attend the morning tea, where roses are no longer trampled, and peacock feathers no longer conceal deceit." With that, the household gathered to celebrate the restoration of trust. Laughter replaced suspicion, music replaced tension, and the Peacock Ball's legacy became a story of redemption rather than ruin. And high above, in the vault of ancestors, the two cameos shone side by side, one diamond, one onyx, a testament to the dual nature of every heart, light and shadow, revealed at last. Chapter 9. The Venetian Vendetta. Dawn broke over Ravenswood, manna like a pale promise of renewal. Yet the peace achieved the night before proved as fragile as a dewdrop upon a rose petal. Sir Rupert Ravenswood, having restored the diamond cameo to its vault and forgiven Roland Hadrill's transgressions, descended the grand staircase in high spirits. Captain Hastings walked beside him, recounting the triumph of Poirot's little grey cells, while Lady Ravenswood followed close behind, her blue gown swaying like a wave of calm in the morning light. But the sparkle in Sir Rupert's eyes faded the moment Mrs. Hudson, pale and trembling, handed him a folded missive, sealed with black wax and bearing a single peacock feather. He broke the seal with a puzzled frown. The letter inside was penned in an elegant hand, the ink a cool sapphire hue. "Sir Rupert Ravenswood, you have thwarted my designs and exposed my masks, yet the final act remains unwritten. At dusk, seek me in the Venetian parlour beneath the East Tower. Bring no guards, for only under the silent witness of masked homage will the truth be revealed, or your family's peace be shattered forever. The peacock feather awaits its final bloom." A hush fell over the group. Hastings pressed a gloved hand to his chest. "Monsieur Poirot, this feels like a challenge worthy of your talents." The detective, summoned by Lady Ravenswood, arrived, swiftly, cane tapping a measured rhythm. He removed his spectacles and regarded the letter with narrowed eyes. A fresh coup de théâtre, Hastings. One more rival to the peacock feather mask's legacy. By afternoon, the household buzzed with speculation. The East Tower, seldom used since Sir Reginald's passing, contained a narrow suite redecorated in Venetian style, gondola-painted walls, tiled floors in mosaic patterns, and a lone harpsichord in the corner. At its centre stood a marble fountain of winged lions, its basin dry and crackling with age. Sir Rupert, mask in hand, consented to meet this anonymous provocateur alone, accompanied only by Poirot and Hastings, as per the stranger's injunction. As dusk deepened, the trio ascended the East Tower's winding stairs. Oil lamps flickered along the corridor, throwing ribbons of shadow across the worn stone. Hastings cast a wary glance at each landing. I hope this parlour is not itself a trap. Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. The greatest peril, Hastings, is the one we invite ourselves to meet. At the top, the Venetian parlour door stood ajar. From within came the soft strains of a lute, playing a slow, mournful dirge. Sir Rupert stepped forward, mask lowered, and pushed the door open. The room lay bathed in amber light. Velvet curtains of emerald green framed tall windows, and cushions of crimson silk were scattered upon a gilded settee. Upon a low table rested two Venetian masks, one of brilliant peacock blue, the other of gleaming ivory. Alongside a single, black-feathered plume. Poirot whispered, "Observe how the masks mirror our own tale, blue for loyalty, white for innocence." Hastings swallowed. What dark twist awaits us? From behind a silk screen, a figure emerged, clad in a flowing black robe, and wearing a third mask, half peacock feather, half ivory porcelain. The figure's voice floated across the chamber, resonant and calm. "Welcome, Sir Rupert. Welcome, Monsieur Poirot. You have solved the manifold riddles of the cameo, yet one remains." The stranger removed the mask, revealing a pale face framed by silver hair. Lady Augusta Ravenswood herself, once hidden away in the Rose Gardens lodge. Gasps erupted. Sir Rupert's eyes widened. Hastings drew in a sharp breath. Lady Augusta laid aside her mask. "I too must unmask my secret. It was I who commissioned the copies, yes, but not merely to preserve our legacy. I sought vengeance upon one whose betrayal cut deeper than any theft." She turned to Mr. Hadrell, who stood in stunned silence. "You know well the price of scandal. My niece, Lady Daphne, suffered disgrace at your hands when you published her youthful indiscretions in your papers." She advanced, voice tremulous with suppressed rage. "You promised discretion, then traded it for sensational headlines. My only recourse was to teach you humility by making you the star of your own scandal." Sir Rupert reached for her arm. "Aunt Augusta, you cannot—" But she silenced him with a raised hand. "Listen, all of you. I lured you here to see that justice be meted in equal measure. Roland Hadrell, you will publicly retract your addition, apologize to my niece, and dedicate all profits to her charity. You will never again traffic in the reputations of innocent hearts." She turned to Poirot. "And you, Hercule, shall bear witness." Hadrell's face crumpled. He lifted his mask, bowing his head. "I accept your terms, Lady Augusta. My pen will slander no more." Poirot inclined his head. A just resolution, though wrought through revenge's mask. May it teach us that vengeance, like perfume, must be applied sparingly. Lady Augusta placed the black-feathered plume upon the settee. The peacock feather's final bloom fades tonight. Let each of us abandon these masks, blue for loyalty, white for innocence, black for vengeance, and embrace what lies beneath. She bowed to her nephew. "Rupert, the family is free of its bonds." Sir Rupert removed his mask and embraced her. "Aunt, your wrath has been fierce, but your heart is fierce with love." Hastings exhaled in relief. Mon Dieu, the plot thickens, then resolves in a single stroke. Poirot tapped his cane. "In truth, Hastings, every mask has its master. Tonight we unmask not only the villain, but the victim who became avenger." As moonlight filtered through the Venetian windows, the 3 masks lay upon the table, one blue, one white, one black, each a testament to a different truth. And in the hush that followed, the Ravenswood family found at last a harmony born of forgiveness rather than fear. The mystery of the Peacock feather mask, it seemed, had one final chapter. A lesson that vengeance, once taken, must yield to mercy. Chapter 10. The Clockwork. Catacomb moonlight glimmered through the broken tracery of the East Tower windows, illuminating the dusty oak floorboards of the abandoned chapel. In its centre sat a solitary wooden dais, upon which rested a curious brass mechanism, a circle of interlocking gears and tiny crystal lenses, half buried beneath centuries of debris. Hercule Poirot knelt by its side, pince-nez in place, tracing the pattern of its clockwork teeth. Captain Hastings, lantern in hand, stood behind him, mask forgotten in his pocket. "Mon ami," Poirot murmured, "this is no ordinary toy. Its workmanship rivals the finest automata of Geneva. Yet why would such a device be hidden within a chapel's foundations? And where does it lead?" Hastings peered at the intricate rings of gears. "It looks like a lock, or perhaps a key. Each gear must be turned in sequence to reveal something." He ran a gloved finger over a copper lever. "Let me guess. We cannot turn any without injuring ourselves." A faint click echoed. Hastings jumped. A small panel slid open in the dais, revealing a narrow metal rod. Poirot smiled softly. "Observe, Hastings. Our chaplain was also a craftsman. Sir Reginald had a penchant for puzzles, and this mechanism likely guards another secret path, perhaps to a final chamber beneath the manor." He withdrew the rod with delicate care. "We must follow it, though the way may be perilous." They carried the rod and mechanism off the dais and descended the chapel side steps into a crypt-like passage. The air grew cooler, heavy with damp stone and stale incense. Torches ignited at their approach, an automatic system of iron sconces that flared to life when the dais panel opened. Hastings and Poirot exchanged astonished glances. The narrow corridor stretched ahead, lined with tomb recesses sealed by carved plaques. Each bore a family name, Ravenswood of every generation. Poirot ran his finger along the inscriptions, pausing at the final blank tablet beside the doorway. "No name," he noted, "a vacant resting place for a secret none may name." He turned to Hastings, pressed the rod into the slot beside the empty plaque. Hastings complied, and with a muted groan, the hidden door swung inward, revealing a steep spiral staircase of black stone. "Courage, Hastings," Poirot said gently. "We descend into the last chapter." They climbed down into darkness, guided by the torchlight that glimmered far below. At the bottom, they emerged into a vast subterranean vault. Arches of basalt rose overhead, and at its centre stood a marble sarcophagus, draped in violet velvet. Upon its lid lay a second brass mechanism, this one larger, with a sapphire-studded dial. Around it, the flicker of torches picked out dozens of sealed niches containing glass jars of powdered pigment, vialed essences, and bundles of hidden parchment. The air smelled of myrrh and ancient secrets. Poirot approached the mechanism. This dial no doubt corresponds to the jars around us, each marked with a cipher we have yet to translate. The final test, Hastings, to unlock the secret that Sir Reginald sealed beneath his halls. Hastings swallowed. What if we turn the dial wrongly? He swallowed hard. We might trigger traps. Poirot's expression was calm. The greatest trap is fear itself. Let us proceed with care. He examined the jars. One labelled heart, another mind, a third soul, and so on. 7 in all, each bearing an astrological symbol. He lifted the rod and inserted it into the dial's central socket. The rod clicked into place, and Poirot turned it slowly to align with the symbol of the lion. A resonant hum filled the vault. The lids of jars embossed with the lion's glyph popped open, releasing a faint golden dust into the air. The walls trembled. Hastings coughed. "Mon Dieu! The dust!" He covered his mouth. Small motes of gold danced in the torchlight. Poirot gently closed the lion jars and turned the dial to the next symbol, a pair of scales. Once more, the matching jars clicked open, releasing a pale silver powder. Hastings backed away. Something tells me these jars hold more than mere pigment. Poirot inclined his head. The labels are metaphorical. Heart, mind, soul, wisdom, courage, truth, love. Each dust may be the essence of that virtue. He tapped the dial again toward the 4th symbol, the eagle, for truth. A low rumble echoed as the sarcophagus lid slid aside, revealing a stone coffin beneath. They advanced warily. Inside lay a single parchment scroll, tied with ribbon and sealed with the Ravenswood crest. Poirot lifted it. The final legacy of Sir Reginald, a confession perhaps, or a testament. He broke the seal and unrolled the scroll, reading by torchlight. To those who find this chamber, know that I have lived among masks and mirrors. I bequeath not only my tales, but my final truth, that love endures beyond every mask, and that trust, once betrayed, may yet be restored. Let this secret guide my heirs to reconcile loyalty and ambition, courage and compassion, and let the peacock feather mask rest forever in honour, not in deception. Poirot folded the scroll reverently. A moving testament, Sir Reginald's final mask laid bare at last. Hastings exhaled. A fitting end to our labyrinth of masks. Poirot looked to the jars. We must carefully return each vial to its niche, seal the dial, reclose the sarcophagus, and retrace our steps. Some secrets are meant only for those who seek with pure intent. They replaced the scroll, closed the sarcophagus, and aligned the dial to the 7th symbol, a peacock feather, whereupon all the lids snapped shut and the walls stilled. The hidden passage resealed itself as they climbed back to the chapel, torches extinguishing behind them in silent succession. At dawn's first light, the grand hall doors opened to reveal Sir Rupert, Lady Ravenswood, and Captain Hastings. Poirot handed Sir Rupert the scroll. "Your father's final words, my lord, truth in his own hand." Sir Rupert broke the seal and read, emotion welling. He looked up at Poirot. He has guided us still, though he has gone beyond the veil. He turned to Hastings. Let us honour his legacy by sharing his testament with all of Ravenswood. Poirot inclined his head. Thus ends the mystery of the Peacock feather mask. A journey through deception, devotion, and at last, reconciliation in truth. Hastings clasped his friend's shoulder. Bravo, mon ami! One final unmasking beneath the weight of centuries. As sunlight flooded the hall, the mask of mystery was lifted forever, leaving only the promise of Sir Reginald's enduring wisdom and the restored honour of Ravenswood Manor. Chapter 11. The Labyrinth of Mirrors, the Morning After the Subterranean. Revelation found Ravenswood Manor cloaked in an uneasy silence. In the aftermath of Sir Reginald's final testament, the household had celebrated a fragile peace, but Poirot sensed an undercurrent of uncertainty. Lady Ravenswood moved through her drawing-room with a pale composure, and Captain Hastings remarked upon the unsettled glances exchanged by servants. Yet it was the west wing that held the greatest mystery. A long corridor lined with tall, arched mirrors whose origins no one could fully recall. Poirot and Hastings entered that corridor at midday, accompanied by Flanders. The mirrors' surfaces gleamed like polished silver, reflecting the trio's cautious advance. Each frame bore the Ravenswood crest entwined with peacock feathers, a motif repeated in the stained-glass skylights above. Hastings touched one mirror's cold edge. "I never liked these reflections," he admitted. "They make me feel I'm watched by 1,000 eyes." Poirot nodded. "Mirrors are a detective's ally and foe alike, Hastings. They reveal what you cannot see directly, and conceal what lies behind your back." He studied the reflections, noting a slight warping at the hall's midpoint. "Observe how the reflections shift there, as though the glass itself is a prism rather than a pane." They reached the corridor's centre, where the warped images coalesced into an uncanny distortion of reality. In one mirror, Hastings' reflection seemed to hesitate behind him. In another, Poirot's moustaches bristled into angles impossible to replicate. Flanders swallowed. You warned me to seal the tunnels, monsieur, but this mirror, it feels as though it hides a door." Poirot ran a fingertip across the warped glass. "Precisely. The distortion is not random. A craftsman inserted this pane deliberately to mask a hidden entrance." He pressed upon a convex surface, and with a soft click, the mirror swung inward on hidden hinges. Behind it lay a narrow spiral stair, descending into shadow. Hastings hesitated. "Another hidden passage?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Sir Reginald's final design, Hastings, a labyrinth within a labyrinth. Let us descend and illuminate what even mirrors sought to hide." The stair led to a low-ceilinged chamber, its walls lined with shelves upon which stood an array of glass bottles, each filled with coloured water. A sign on the far wall read, in delicate script, "Reflections of the Soul." At the room's centre stood a stone pedestal bearing a single silver mirror, its frame shaped like a peacock's plume. Beneath it lay an envelope sealed with black wax. Poirot lifted the envelope, breaking the seal. Inside was a single sheet of vellum, inscribed in dark violet ink. "To those who dare to know the truest heart of Ravenswood, combine the waters of courage and truth, and the path will reveal itself. Yet beware, only one who has walked through every mask may claim the final reflection. Hastings frowned. Courage and truth, 2 bottles among many. Which bears which label? He turned to the shelves. Each bottle bore a single word etched in metal. Memory, love, courage, truth, loyalty, fear, forgiveness. Poirot selected the 2 nearest courage and truth, lifting them from their dusty perches. He poured equal measures into a glass bowl on the pedestal. The waters shimmered, then glowed with a soft azure light, casting dancing patterns upon the walls. A panel slid open behind the pedestal, revealing a narrow passage beyond. Hastings and Flanders exchanged awed glances as they stepped through. The passage walls were lined with more mirrors, each reflecting snippets of memory. A laughing party in the grand hall, the midnight theft, the catacomb beneath the chapel. As they passed, each reflection flickered and changed, showing not the present moment, but moments of choice and regret. Poirot paused before a particularly large mirror. Its reflection showed Lady Augusta in the rose garden, her hands trembling, as she placed the cameo in its ivy niche. Then the image shifted to Sir Rupert forgiving her, and finally to Roland Hadrill bowing at the vault door. Hastings peered at his own image, standing beside Poirot, eyes of trust and admiration. These mirrors, they reveal our secrets. Poirot touched the glass. They remind us that every mask we donned bore its own truth, and every choice we made shaped the course of this mystery. He pressed upon a symbol etched into the frame, a peacock feather entwined with a heart. The mirror swung inward, revealing a final chamber beyond. That chamber was circular, its walls draped in silver and blue tapestries depicting peacocks in flight. At its centre stood a low fountain of polished obsidian, water trickling around its rim. Above the fountain hovered the diamond cameo, suspended by an invisible force. Behind it, carved in the marble floor, was the final message. He who seeks the final mask must walk alone through the waters of reflection. Hastings stared. Monsieur, the gem's suspended. The only way to reach it is to step into the fountain. Poirot studied the room's geometry. Yes, and alone, for no other soul may join. The test of the unmasked heart. He looked kindly at Hastings. Will you await me at the corridor's mouth? Hastings nodded, concern in his eyes. Be careful! He retreated, leaving Poirot before the fountain. Poirot removed his mask and gloves, placing them gently upon the fountain's edge. He knelt to dip his hands into the cool water. The surface shimmered, and he stepped forward, each footfall sending ripples through the obsidian. As he reached the centre, the stone floor beneath him glowed with filigreed lines, guiding his steps. At the exact centre, he raised his hand and touched the cameo. The diamond came forward, descending from its hover to rest in his grasp. At that moment, the chamber's walls dissolved into mist, and Poirot found himself before a solitary mirror, its surface pulsing like a living eye. From its depths emerged his own reflection, unmasked and intent. Monsieur Poirot, the reflection, intoned, you have proven your courage, upheld your truth, and faced every choice without deception. Now behold the final secret, the identity of the hand that guides Ravenswood's fate. The mirror clouded, then cleared to reveal a figure. standing behind Hastings in the corridor, a slender woman in peacock blue satin, mask in hand, Lady Ravenswood herself. Poirot's heart gave a quiet leap. The reflection spoke again. She who restored the jewel, forgave the guilty, and shielded her family with love and mercy, is the true guardian of this legacy. Poirot bowed his head, tears bright in his eyes. "Madame, you are the final sentinel." The mirror's image faded, and Poirot found himself alone in the chamber once more, the diamond cameo warm in his palm. He retraced his steps through the labyrinth of mirrors, each reflection now showing hope rather than doubt. Returning to the grand hall at dawn's first light, Poirot presented the cameo to Sir Rupert, who received it with reverent joy. Lady Ravenswood emerged from behind a velvet curtain, her gown catching the morning sun like a wave of blue silk. Poirot approached her, bowing low. "My lady," he said, voice soft, "you are the unmasked heart of Ravenswood." She smiled, eyes glistening. "Monsieur Poirot, you have guided us through every mirror and mask. For that, we owe you more than words." She placed the diamond cameo upon the dais, beside its black twin, and allowed a single peacock feather to rest between them. Hastings stepped forward, glancing at Poirot. "An astonishing conclusion, mon ami." Poirot touched his moustaches. "Sometimes the greatest mystery lies not in who stolen the jewel, but in who safeguarded the soul of this house." He turned to the assembled household. "Let us leave these mirrors behind, and step into the light of truth at last." As sunlight streamed through the chapel windows, painting the hall in gold and azure, the mystery of the peacock feather mask found its ultimate unmasking. A celebration not of scandal, but of courage, not of deception, but of devotion, and not of masks, but of the hearts that beat behind them. Chapter 12. The silent orchestra week had passed since the House of Ravenswood breathed freely again. The diamond cameo rested safely in its vault, and the twin collection of masks lay stored in the library, bows of gratitude adorning each cushion as tokens of reconciliation. Yet the manor still reverberated with echoes of hidden passages and forgotten puzzles. It was Sir Rupert's wish to celebrate this fragile piece with an evening recital in the old music gallery, a gathering to remind all that art and harmony hold greater power than deceit. Invitations were dispatched to the household, and a select few friends, including Poirot and Hastings. Word of a rare collection of automated musical instruments, an inheritance of Sir Reginald's that had never been played, had stirred curiosity, for these clockwork wonders were fabled to render a silent orchestra audible once more. As guests assembled beneath the high vaulted timbers, the gallery's stained-glass windows glowed with the fading light of dusk. Velvet cushions, arranged in concentric rings around a dais, awaited the performance. Upon the dais stood 3 automatons, a gilded harpsichord whose keys appeared poised to move by unseen fingers, a pair of silver cymbals balanced on slender rods, and a brass violin cradled upon its stand. No musician was in sight, only these sleeping marvels waiting to awaken. Sir Rupert, in a deep burgundy coat, welcomed his guests with cordial warmth. "Tonight," he declared, "we shall hear the music of Ravenswood's heart, our silent orchestra restored." Hastings exchanged an amused glance with Lady Ravenswood. "A symphony by clockwork," he whispered. "Still, Anything that banishes last week's masks seems a welcome diversion. Poirot, stroking his moustaches, replied quietly, "Indeed, Hastings. Yet art built upon gears and springs may conceal its own mysteries." As the last of the guests found their seats, Lady Daphne Sinclair beside Dr. Lawson, Lady Augusta at Flanders's side, and Hadril bowing among the loyal staff, Sir Rupert placed a silver baton upon the harpsichord's lid. At his signal, the baton struck a concealed switch. The gallery fell silent for but a heartbeat, before a single note, crystalline and pure, chimed from the harpsichord. Hastings's eyes widened. "Good heavens, it plays itself!" Sir Rupert lifted the baton again, and the keys began moving in fluid cascades, weaving a baroque melody that filled the chamber with living grace. Next, the cymbals clashed in delicate counterpoint, and the violin's bow traced its strings with uncanny precision. Each instrument joined in turn, until the three automatons produced a full, interwoven fugue so lifelike one might believe human. Musicians performed behind a curtain. Warm applause erupted as the final chord resonated. Yet Poirot remained motionless, lips pressed, brow furrowed. "Monsieur," Hastings nudged him, "surely you share our wonder." Poirot inclined his head slowly. "Marvellous indeed, Hastings, but I notice a pattern in their opening sequence. The tempo and key signature correspond to Sir Reginald's favourite nocturne, written not for performance, but for puzzle." He rose and stepped to the side. "Observe how the violin begins on the fifth of D minor, then descends to the third, exactly as noted in his ciphered will. These notes, when transposed, spell out a message if one knows the code." Hastings looked on, intrigued as Poirot beckoned him nearer. The detective crouched beside the harpsichord, tracing the carved floral motif that concealed a tiny panel. With his cane's tip, he pressed a hidden latch. The harpsichord's body slid apart to reveal a shallow compartment beneath the keys. Within lay a folded parchment, edges browned with age, bearing Sir Reginald's monogram in deep indigo ink. Poirot carefully extracted the scroll, unfolding it before the expectant guests. "This," he announced, voice clear, "is the final movement, an addendum to Sir Reginald's testament. Note its opening passage. To those who decipher my silent concerto, I bequeath not only my jewels, but the secret of Ravenswood's greatest treasure, lost to the years beneath the catacombs' arches." It continues with directions to a hidden chamber beneath the chapel, detailing the location of a cache of pearls and gemstones meant to fund the estate's restoration. Gasps of astonishment washed through the gallery. Lady Augusta clutched her chest. "Pearls? He hid a fortune," she whispered. Sir Rupert took the scroll, voice trembling with awe. "My father, he planned beyond life's limits." Dr. Lawson combed his beard. "But why conceal such wealth? Why through puzzle rather than bequest?" Poirot smiled gently. Sir Reginald knew the fragility of trust. He left clues only for those who proved their integrity through trials of loyalty. He looked around at the assembled friends, smiles and tears mingling on their faces. Now the silent orchestra has spoken, and we must answer its call. The remainder of the recital passed in reverent hush, each note echoing the chamber's triumph over intrigue. When the final fugue faded, the guests rose in solemn accord. Sir Rupert addressed them. At dawn, we gather in the chapel to retrieve my father's hidden trove. Let us restore Ravenswood's future, not through scandal, but through unity and stewardship. Laughter and applause followed, genuine and unguarded. That night, beneath a canopy of stars, Poirot and Hastings walked the rose garden in companionable silence. Hastings turned to his friend. A treasure of pearls beneath the chapel, who would have thought? Poirot tilted his head. Sir Reginald's last masterpiece was not in melody, but in foresight. He wove his legacy into every instrument and mirror in this house. He paused by the rose arch. Tomorrow's discovery will be the grand finale, and when we unearth those pearls, Ravenswood shall know that true wealth lies not in gems, but in the bonds we forged through all our masks and mirrors. Thus, the silent orchestra's final movement led Sir Rupert and his companions to the bare threshold of a new chapter, one promising restoration, generosity, and the enduring harmony of a family whose greatest symphony lay in its unity. Chapter 13. The Chapel. Crypt dawn's grey light seeped into the rose-lined cloisters as the household of Ravenswood Manor gathered before the old chapel door. Sir Rupert stood at its threshold, holding the folded scroll he had retrieved from the silent orchestra's chamber. Around him assembled Lady Ravenswood, Lady Augusta, Lady Sinclair, Captain Hastings, Mrs. Hudson, Flanders Dupree, Dr. Lawson, James Fairchild, and even Roland Hadrill, each bearing lanterns or torches, their expressions a blend of anticipation and solemnity. Poirot, standing to one side, observed in silence, his little grey cells prepared for the final journey. Sir Rupert spread the scroll upon a ledge beside the iron-bound door, and began to read aloud the ciphered directions, his voice steady, with resolve. The parchment described a hidden hatch beneath the altar, accessible only when the carved lilies were aligned with the chapel's original foundation stones. Sir Rupert carefully traced a finger along the stone floor, pressing 2 lilies flush with concentric patterns etched in worn marble. At once the altar's base shuddered, and a small section of marble lifted like a coffin lid, revealing a narrow shaft that descended into darkness. A hush fell as Sir Rupert extended a lantern downward. Hastings gripped Sir Rupert's arm. "Are we certain this is safe?" he whispered. Sir Rupert inclined his head. "My father trusted none but the true heirs. He would not endanger us." Mrs. Hudson, ever the stalwart presence, knelt to repel the hatch fully, her shawl brushing the stone. Through the opening they glimpsed rough-hewn steps, slick with moisture. Flanders took a deep breath. "I will lead the way," he offered, stepping forward to secure rope handholds along the wall. Poirot watched him attentively, noting the steward's steady calm after so many trials. One by one, the party descended into the crypt. Their lanterns cast dancing shadows along walls carved with symbols of lily, peacock feather, and cross. The air grew cooler, damp with centuries of disuse, and the faint drip of water echoed through the narrow passage. At the bottom they emerged into a larger chamber, vaulted low and circular, lit by torches set in stone sconces. At its centre lay a stone chest bound by rusted iron straps, its lid closed tight, bearing in relief the crest of Ravenswood, a peacock in full plume. Sir Rupert moved forward reverently, his pulses quickening. He placed the scroll upon the chest, aligning its text with the crest above, and uttered the single word inscribed at the bottom of the parchment: "Unveil." At once, 2 hidden catches snapped. The iron straps fell free with a grinding clatter. With a heave, Sir Rupert lifted the lid. Inside lay a cache of pearls, hundreds of lustrous orbs arranged upon crimson velvet, and beside them small velvet pouches filled with gemstones of amethyst, emerald, and garnet. Gasps rippled through the assembly as the torchlight revealed the treasure Sir Reginald had stowed away to preserve his family's future. Lady Augusta stepped forward, tears glistening as she reached to lift a single pearl, its surface glowing softly. "My brother! I never dreamed he would leave so much for us." Lady Ravenswood, her composure usually unshakable, placed a comforting hand upon Sir Rupert's shoulder. "It is his legacy of love, not fear, that endures." Roland Hadrill bowed deeply. I am humbled. These pearls shall restore Ravenswood's fortunes, as your father intended." His voice cracked with remorse and gratitude. Poirot approached, his pince-nez catching the flicker of torchlight. He surveyed the pearls and the careful arrangement of pouches, noting the order of placement. First the pearls, then the gems of wisdom, courage, memory, and hope. A final puzzle, elegantly laid, he murmured. "My lord, the order reflects your father's priorities. The treasure of the heart transcends jewels. It is the virtues he loved most." He turned to Hastings. "And so, Hastings, we have concluded Sir Reginald's silent concerto, a symphony of hidden truths, played through mask and mirror, clockwork and crypt. Yet the sweetest note is the one we now share without artifice." Dr. Lawson, ever practical, inspected the gemstones. Their value will secure the estate for generations and allow us to care for our people. Dupree nodded. "The gardens, the buildings, the archives, all may be restored." Mrs. Hudson, her silver hair catching the torch's glow, breathed, "Sir Reginald's final beacon will guide Ravenswood into a new dawn." Sir Rupert gathered the pouches gently, each one tied with ribbon of family blue. He turned to his assembled friends and family. "Let us carry these treasures back to the manor, and from there build a future worthy of my father's memory." He led the way toward the crypt's exit. Lantern held high, one by one, they ascended the spiral steps, torches and lanterns illuminating every carved relief. Peacock feathers gleaming in stone, chrysanthemums unfurling in eternal bloom. Back in the chapel, Sir Rupert closed the hatch and restored the hen gentium, lilies to their natural positions. The altar settled without sound, as though it had never been disturbed. He placed the pouches upon the dais, and Lady Ravenswood sealed the chest behind the altar, ensuring no secret passage remained open. 2 idle feet, Captain Hastings and Flanders carried the treasure toward the rose-scented cloisters, where servants awaited with covered trays and lit torches. As the last pouch emerged into the morning air, Sir Rupert paused beneath the rose arch, breathing deeply of the dawn's promise. He looked to Poirot, eyes bright. "My father's greatest gift was this night's journey. His trust in us and in the puzzles he left behind has led us here." He bowed his head in gratitude. Poirot inclined. "His own, and by truth, courage and unity have you honoured that gift, my lord." Lady Sinclair approached, carrying a small handful of rose petals. She tossed them upon the path where the pearls had passed, their pink petals drifting lightly to the aiguë stones. May this day be remembered not for masks or mystery, but for the grace of discovery. Hastings wrapped an arm around Sir Rupert's shoulders. To the restoration of Ravenswood, and the unmasking of its secrets. Sir Rupert raised a pouch of pearls aloft. To family, to legacy, and to the courage to seek the hidden, in that moment, beneath the rose arch and the pale morning sky, the silent orchestra's final movement resonated not in sound, but in hearts united. Its last refrain, the promise of a future built on the very jewels that Sir Reginald had hidden, beneath the chapel crypt. Chapter 14. The Missing Pearl. The morning sun shone brightly across Ravenswood Manor, yet its warmth did little to thaw the unease that crept through the servants' halls. Only 2 days had passed since the discovery of Sir Reginald's hidden treasure beneath the chapel crypt, yet already a celebratory banquet had been hastily arranged in the grand hall to welcome prosperity back to the estate. Tables groaned. Under platters of pheasant and venison, crystal decanters brimmed with claret, and the silken banners of peacock blue fluttered above the guests' heads. Sir Rupert, radiant in a midnight blue frock coat, moved among the company with unaccustomed ease, dispensing smiles and nods. Lady Ravenswood presided over the floral arrangements with gentle dignity, her every gesture suffused with relief. Captain Hastings stood beside Hercule Poirot near a cluster of ancient marble columns, sampling a glass of amber-tinted sherry. "By Jove," he murmured, "I have never seen the manor so alive with laughter." Poirot dipped his head. "Yes, but rejoice we must, though my little grey cells detect a faint undercurrent of disquiet, even in this mirth." Hastings followed his friend's gaze toward Mrs. Hudson, who bustled among the guests, eyes darting like a startled bird. Poirot inclined his cane thoughtfully. "Let us simply remain vigilant." At the banquet centre stood a low candelabra, upon which rested the largest pearl from Sir Reginald's hoard. It gleamed like moonlight on water, an orb of flawless luminescence. By tradition, Sir Rupert had declared it the evening centrepiece, symbolising the unity of Ravenswood's lineage. As the meal progressed and toasts were offered, to legacy, to love, to the little grey cells, the guests' attention inevitably returned to that single pearl, larger than an egg, half buried in a bed of white rose petals. Near the banquet's close, Sir Rupert rose to address his family and friends. He tapped his glass, and the clinking hush fell. "My dear friends, we stand restored, thanks to the courage of our household and the brilliance of Monsieur Poirot. Tonight we celebrate more than treasure. We celebrate trust renewed." He paused, smiling broadly. "And now I present the final toast to Ravenswood, its past honoured and its future secure." At that moment a sudden gasp rippled through the assembled company. Sir Rupert's smile froze. Where once lay that single pearl, there was now only a hollow nest of rose petals. The largest pearl had vanished. A stunned silence followed. Lady Augusta turned pale. Lady Daphne's hand flew to her throat. Hastings and Poirot pushed through the guests to the centrepiece. Poirot bent over the bed of petals. "The pearl has been taken without a single petal disturbed. An audacious theft." Flanders rushed forward, face ashen. Impossible, monsieur. The doors were locked. No one may enter or leave. He looked to Mrs. Hudson, whose expression rippled with shock. Check the windows, he ordered. She darted away, her skirts billowing. Sir Rupert's voice cracked. This cannot be. That pearl was the symbol of our unity. He turned to Poirot. Hercule, what now? Poirot rose, gloved hands steadied on his cane. We must treat this as the greatest of riddles. The largest pearl will not vanish without leaving a trace. He signalled to Hastings. Observe the rose petals. Hastings crouched and ran a finger across the circle's edge. The petals are fresh, cut just this morning, and none seem uprooted. He sniffed the air. Yet I detect a faint aroma of damp earth. And is that tobacco? Poirot nodded. You have an acute nose, Hastings. Dark tobacco, uncommon in this house, but not unknown. He turned to the steward, Flanders. Where might such a scent linger? Flanders swallowed. Perhaps near the smoking room, or the gardener's shed. Poirot tapped his cane. Let us begin at the gardener's domain. The winter orchard beyond the west terrace lay still beneath frost-tipped branches. Dupree, the stolid gardener, emerged from the potting shed just as Poirot and Hastings approached. He wiped his hands on a sodden rag, stamping his boots to shake off dew. Hastings called out, Monsieur Dupré, may we question you? Dupree's eyes tightened. Of course. Good morning. Poirot surveyed him keenly. Monsieur Dupré, did you happen to notice any unusual activity near the rose garden or the stable yard last night? Dupré shrugged. Not that I recall. I visited the greenhouse around midnight to tend the frost lamps, but all was quiet. Poirot nodded. Were you alone? Dupré hesitated. Yes, though Mrs. Bartram fetched me at 11:30 to repair the east tower window. Poirot's eyes flickered. And would she mention why? Dupré shook his head. No, but it was brief. Poirot thanked him and strode toward the glass house, Hastings at his elbow. Dupré's innocence is not assured, Poirot murmured. Yet the rose petals bore no disturbance. The pearl must have been removed before guests viewed the centrepiece, perhaps even before the banquet began. He tapped his moustaches. Remember the masked corridors, Hastings? Shortcuts that servants know and guests do not. In the glass house, the air was thick with the heady smell of hyacinth and damp soil. Poirot ran his gloved hand along a bench covered in pots. Look here, he said, pointing to a shard of white pearls woven into the terracotta. Hastings stooped to examine. A fragment of the largest pearl, clearly chipped. Poirot nodded. During removal, the pearl's setting scratched against the potting soil, breaking off a sliver. This indicates the theft occurred not during the banquet, but earlier, when that pearl was moved from the chapel crypt chest to its dais. He traced muddy footprints leading to the greenhouse's rear exit. Follow me! They emerged into a hidden alley behind the kitchen, where barrels blocked the view from the terrace. The tracks continued toward the smuggler's hatch, a wooden trap door disguised as a load bay. Poirot lifted the latch, revealing steps descending into a narrow crawl space. He motioned for Hastings to remain above. I descend alone. He slid down into the darkness, lantern lit. In the low tunnel, the air grew colder, and damp stones glistened under torchlight. Poirot moved ahead, following the trace of boot prints that shifted to slipper treads where the passage widened. He emerged in the servants' cellars, where crates of preserved fruits lined the walls. There, upon a low table, lay the largest pearl, resting amidst jars of elderberry jam. Beside it, a figure cowered in the corner, the scullery maid, Mrs. Bartram, her eyes wide with fear. Poirot approached gently. "Mademoiselle, do not be afraid." She trembled and sprang to her feet. "Monsieur Poirot, I had no choice." Her voice broke. I saw the pearl and thought I could sell it to save my family from destitution." She held the pearl aloft. "I meant to return it, yet when I held this pearl, I feared the punishment." Hastings descended, frowning. "But the dawn is upon us. Why did you expose it now?" Mrs. Bartram sobbed. "My conscience could bear it no longer. I heard whispering of auction plans in the servants' hall, and I knew the pearl would be lost forever. So I left it here, hoping you would find it before harm was done." She dropped her head, tears streaming. Poirot regarded her with calm compassion. "Your fear is understandable, yet your deed threatened the family's unity." He held out a hand. "Return it at once to its velvet nest, and all will be well." Mrs. Bartram handed the pearl to Hastings, voice muffled. I am sorry." They emerged back into the greenhouse. Hastings wrapped the pearl in a soft cloth and carried it carefully to the dais, where Sir Rupert waited, mask in hand. Sir Rupert clasped the pearl as though embracing a beloved child. "Thank you, Mrs. Bartram, for your honesty at last." He turned to the assembly. "Let this be a lesson that desperation may lead to wrongdoing, but confession leads to redemption." He placed the pearl upon its cushion, nestling it amid fresh rose petals. Poirot stepped forward, addressing the servants and guests alike. The final theft was driven by need, not malice. Yet it occurred because we forgot that treasure lies not only in gems, but in community. When one soul falters, another must uplift. He paused to let his words sink in. Let us forgive this lapse, and safeguard our bonds more dearly than any jewel. Lady Ravenswood stepped to Mrs. Bartram and clasped her hand. "All is forgiven. You may continue to serve Ravenswood with pride." Mrs. Bartram bowed, tears mingling with smiles. The assembled household burst into warm applause. The final mask of fear lifted at last. That evening, the grand hall glowed with laughter and candlelight. The large pearl shone once more at the banquet's heart, its brilliance unmarred. Poirot and Hastings shared a final glass of champagne. Hastings raised his flute, to truth, courage, and the triumph of mercy over fear. Poirot touched his glass. "To the little grey cells, and to hearts unmasked." Outside the windows, the moon rose over Ravenswood Gothic spires. Within, every face was open, every hand joined, and every mask laid to rest. The mystery of the Peacock feather mask had run its final course, its greatest treasure, the unbroken trust of a family reunited. Chapter 15. A Legacy Unveiled. The dawn sun shone over Ravenswood Manor with a gentle warmth, gilding every turret and gable in soft gold. For the first time in many days, the great house felt at peace. Its long corridors no longer whispered of hidden corridors, stolen jewels, or masked conspiracies. Instead, The laughter of servants preparing for the morning's festivities drifted through open windows. In the grand hall, long tables were laden with fresh fruit, warm pastries, and carafes of crystal-clear spring water. Flowers, white lilies, pale blue hydrangeas, and deep violet irises were arranged in profusion, symbolizing purity, loyalty, and wisdom. At the far end, Sir Rupert Ravenswood stood before the high throne chair once occupied by his ancestors, the storied diamond cameo gleaming in its velvet case upon a low pedestal beside him. Today would mark not a gala of masks and performances, but a solemn ceremony of remembrance and renewal, an unveiling of the true legacy Sir Reginald Evesham had intended all along. Hercule Poirot arrived with Captain Hastings at the Manors, East Portico, their footsteps echoing across the cobblestones. Poirot, in a sober charcoal suit and understated cravat, carried the final scroll plucked from the clockwork dais, the one bearing Sir Reginald's testament to unity and compassion. Hastings followed, broad-shouldered and brisk of step, bearing a small silver box containing the black feathered plume that had once symbolized vengeance. The two men climbed the steps, leaving tracks in the dew-moistened flagstones. Lady Ravenswood greeted them with a serene smile. Her gown, a soft dove-grey shot with silver threads, shimmered in the morning light. At her side stood Lady Augusta, upright and composed, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. The remaining household, Lady Sinclair, Roland Hadrill, Dr. Lawson, James Fairchild, Flanders Dupree, and Mrs. Hudson, assembled behind them in a respectful semicircle. Even the two peacock masks, symbolic of the manor's long journey from intrigue to reconciliation, rested on a silk-draped table behind Sir Rupert, now mute witnesses to the final chapter. Sir Rupert, clear of voice and steady of hand, addressed the gathering. "My friends, once more you have stood by Ravenswood at her hour of need. The diamonds and pearls have been recovered, the puzzles have been solved, the masks have fallen. Yet there remains one final unveiling, my father's true legacy, written not in treasure, but in principles that endure beyond any gem's sparkle." He gestured to Poirot, who stepped forward and gently handed him the scroll. Sir Rupert broke the seal and unfurled the parchment, reading aloud each deliberate word. "To those who find this testament, know that every mask I wore in life served to protect what I loved most, family, friendship, and the enduring bond of trust. These jewels are but symbols of that bond, meant to support Ravenswood's future. Yet the greatest treasure lies not beneath the chapel crypt, nor within any hidden vault, but within the hearts of those who preserve one another. Cherish one another, forgive one another, and let your unity shine brighter than any diamond. In that light, Ravenswood shall prosper forever." A hush fell. Lady Sinclair dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Hastings exhaled, a single nod of understanding, passing between him and Poirot. Roland Hadrill knelt and kissed Sir Rupert's hand. Remorse and gratitude mingled in his expression. Sir Rupert refolded the scroll and placed it in a leather satchel bound with silver ribbon, then turned to the silver box Hastings held. He opened the lid, revealing the black feathered plume that had once threatened vengeance and scandal. Sir Rupert lifted it reverently. "This plume he said, voice resonant, represents the darkest chapter of our ordeal. Fear, ambition, betrayal. Yet from that darkness we have forged compassion. He laid the plume upon the scroll. Let it rest here, a reminder that vengeance must give way to mercy. He then retrieved from a bosom pocket the bronze feather pin that Hastings had worn when he first arrived, one of the many clues that had surfaced. Sir Rupert fixed the pin to his lapel. And this, he continued, holding the pin aloft, represents every friend and ally who stood by this house despite its trials. May it guide us to remain steadfast. Turning to face his assembled household, Sir Rupert's eyes shone. Now let us consecrate this day with a vow, that Ravenswood's legacy will be one of honour and unity. No more shall secrets fester behind corridors and mirrors. No more shall masks hide true intent. From this moment we commit ourselves to truth, loyalty, forgiveness, and love, values that transcend any gem's brilliance. At his signal, Lady Ravenswood and Lady Augusta stepped forward and pressed their palms upon the silver case. Flanders, Dupree, and Mrs. Hudson followed, suit, each placing a hand upon the velvet lid. Then Hastings, Dr. Lawson, James Fairchild, Lady Sinclair, and Roland Hadrill joined, each silently pledging allegiance to the values they now enshrined. Finally, Poirot approached. He laid his cane across the case, a gesture of respect and completion. Sir Rupert closed his eyes briefly, savouring the unity that shimmered in the morning air. Then he opened the lid and lifted the diamond cameo, holding it high. This jewel, he proclaimed, once sparked intrigue and discord, but now, in trust and forgiveness, it shall symbolize our enduring bond. Let it shine as a beacon for all who enter Ravenswood's gates. He replaced the cameo in its case and snapped it shut, locking it with a key crafted from the bronze pin. A slow, steady clap rose from the gathered household, blossoming into applause, cheers, and tears of joy. The manor seemed to exhale, as though freeing itself from the weight of falsehood and fear. In that moment Hastings leaned toward Poirot. Mon ami, a remarkable conclusion, a symphony of the human heart, finally unmasked. Poirot nodded, a rare smile warming his lips. Yes, Captain, the greatest mystery was never the jewel, but the question of whether kindness could overcome ambition, and whether trust could be rebuilt after betrayal. Tonight we have our answer. Sir Rupert descended the dais to join the celebration. As the first notes of a pianoforte filled the hall, played by Lady Sinclair herself, guests moved to form a circle around the dais. They danced, laughed, and sang, for Ravenswood's greatest legacy had been unveiled. A community bound by compassion, guided by truth, and unbreakable in its unity. And though the peacock feather, once the emblem of mystery, rested quietly on its draped table, no mask remained to hide a single doubt. Ravenswood Manor had found its soul, and that soul would endure for generations yet to come.